Hello, very good special Sunday evening to you all. Hopefully everyone is doing great. Welcome to a super secret Sunday system stream brought to you by the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, and I am welcoming you to these not all that uncommon, but certainly special Sunday streams where, you know, we've got a busy schedule. We got a lot of games. We got actual plays to play. We've got Pathfinder 2 and other major game systems to talk about. So these Sunday games streams, Sunday streams will really give me a chance to sort of, you know, take a seat back and just sort of relax and sort of just, you know, do whatever feels like it's, you know, natural. So that's kind of what we're doing here. Hopefully everybody is doing well. Today, we are going to be talking about Fabula Ultima. We brought you, at least a couple months ago, we did a first look, which is one of our recurring streams, where we go ahead and I open up a brand new game, a game that I have never really looked into before. And, you know, I go through the rules and I really try to get a sense for, you know, what we're doing here. And, you know, that's shout out to you. All right. We got a super chat there from Self-Confessed Cynic. Thank you. Thank you. We had a little special shout out today for our super chats. Yeah, so we, you know, well, geez, there's a lot to say here. We did the first look, and I was impressed. I mean, that's easy to say. I thought the game system, I don't know what I expected going into it, but I certainly had some reservations. But the first look really, really had me interested. There was a lot about the game system that I thought had a lot of potential because it really jived with some of my favorite games. In fact, the creator of the game calls out how some of my favorite games in the last 20 years of role-playing games were some of his primary inspirations. And then at Gen Con, I had the opportunity to go stop by their booth at Need Games, had a chance to have a brief conversation with Emmanuel, the game creator. It was actually super duper nice of him. I went there to buy the High Fantasy Atlas, and he gave it to me for free. He really appreciated that we had done such a in-depth look at his game. And of course, he was riding high because the day before, the night prior, the game had just won a gold ENnie and a silver ENnie. So, needless to say, the game got some pretty major kudos and well-deserved. But despite all of that, I still had not gotten it to the table. And I had the opportunity to dig a little bit more into the game system, and I also picked up this, this is like the quick start game. It's real thin. But this is just the quick start at Gen Con. I thought, you know what? This Friday, this past Friday, we had Kaz in town. We weren't really sure what game we were going to play. And I said, you know what? Let's get this thing to the table. Let's give it a whirl. And I got to tell you, it was a really amazing experience. We'll kind of go over it kind of step by step, but long story short, it did, I would say 90% of what I want out of a role-playing game, it did. For that, you know, for that specific type of genre. If I'm looking to do sort of the, you know, the gritty dungeon crawling game where you're tracking every bit of torch and rope, obviously this game is not that. But if I want a sort of narrative forward game with still having a semblance of combat rounds, my go-to used to be 13th Age. And I still think 13th Age is a fantastic game, but I think this game does it better. And obviously with the caveat that it's under the kind of aegis of the sort of, you know, JRPG moniker. Although I do think that's, you know, that theme is, you know, it's pretty lightly applied. I think you could pretty much do whatever you want with this game system, and I think you'd work out okay. Hey, Lollipop, thank you.
Lollipop Candy tip $10. I'm super interested in this system. Can't wait to hear more about it. Love these steams. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so we don't have any tip goals today. It's really just just us hanging out, and I appreciate all the super chats. I appreciate all the tips, of course. If you feel like you want to throw some love my way, by all means, please do so. Myself and the Knights appreciate it. But really, again, tonight is really all about sort of just taking it easy and hanging out, and just kind of really just geeking out and nerding out a little bit about this great game. Animazemon, yes, the tip is from Final Fantasy VII. Probably one of my top 3 favorite video games of all time. But big fan of that game. Don't like the remaster. I didn't play the remaster. I watched somebody play the game, but I hate the active fighting. Like, that's not something I want to do ever. So, and again, if you have any comments or questions or things that you want to talk about or specific things that you want to dig into, please feel free to do so in the chat. I don't think there's going to be too many of us here tonight, so we'll have plenty of time to go overhead and get that. Well, Beowulf, I'm not much of a video gamer, so to be fair. Oh, Full Metal Dragon, sorry, says best Final Fantasy ever. It's crazy. There was a time where I would have said yes, but as time has gone on, Shadram, I appreciate it.
I just want to hear the music again.
Thank you. Appreciate the tip. Thank you. I mean, don't we all? But Texan is in the chat, says, in the same way that I have picked up L5R and Root, both fantastic games, after your reviews, I had to pick up Fabula Ultima. Book came in yesterday, so need to dig into it before our group can try it in a few weeks, hopefully. So I will say this. If you can pick up the PDF or you can pick up the physical book, I think this press start, quick start is very good. Number one, it has pre-gens. And it does a really great job of sort of like making the pre-gens interesting and tied into this short little adventure. Now, when we played, we're veteran role players, so everybody went ahead and made their own characters. But we kind of kind of made our way through it and sort of took some creative liberties in order to make the characters fit into the context of this. But this basically teaches the game in some of the best beginner box sets do this. Pathfinder 2's beginner box set does this, where basically each new scene introduces a new element of the game. And so it does a really, really good job. And of course, with my players being really fun and creative and interesting, like, they were able to add their own cool, unique elements to it. And we actually ended up having just a really, really incredible experience, all in all. Larsky, thank you.
Larsky tipped $3. I've learned so much from these deep dives and system previews.
Sweet.
I'm 100% a different GM now, and my players and I are having a blast. I love the streams no one watches.
Well, Larsky, that is the advantage of my my YouTube model, which is that number one, I have a day job, so I don't rely on this as a full-time content creator. But number two, I have a thriving, incredible, amazing Patreon, which basically allows me to not have to worry as much about the views, because my patrons are really what keep me going, and their support means the world to me. So, thank you so much. And if you are interested in supporting the Knights in that way, there's always a link below to patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. Happy to have you there if you want to talk about those things. In fact, we've had several Fabula Ultima games since that first look that have happened within our community server. So, again, just an absolute huge support for the game coming out of a wide range of player types. So obviously it's going to apply, it's going to really appeal to your anime fans and your sort of weebs. But I'm not an anime fan. I am a Final Fantasy fan, but I haven't played a Final Fantasy since 12. I skipped 13. 14 was, I don't even know what 14 was. Was that the one online? I didn't play 15. I haven't played 16. All right, thank you, Neil.
Neil tipped $3.
Sweet.
I think press start is free on drive-through RPG.
Even better, Neil tells us that it is free on drive-through RPG. So that's really great. I thought that they did a great job with this, and I thought they put it together really, really well. So, okay, Final Fantasy 14 is the MMO. Yeah. So yeah, never played that one. Never played 13. 12 was the last one I played and didn't beat. Final Fantasy 11, I played for that was their first MMO. Played for a couple months probably, and then stopped playing. Never got super into that one. Never played X2 because I hate Final Fantasy 10. Love Final Fantasy 9, 7, 8 was okay. Love 6. Haven't played 3 or 2, but I have played 5, which wasn't out when I was a kid. Final Fantasy 4, aka Final Fantasy 2, was really, really one of my favorite games for a long time. It still is in some cases, but I actually am a huge fan. The Final Fantasy I have played the most and beaten the most is Final Fantasy 1. I love the original Final Fantasy game. It's like ASMR to me. I just, I get down to Elf Town. I just grind ogres and creeps or crawlers until I can get enough money to buy all the sick level 3, level 4 spells and all of the silver or mithril swords out of Elf Town. I just really, really love that, Oh yeah. Big shot. I mean, number one, I love Final Fantasy 4 because I do think the story is really great, but the story, of Cecil and the whole Dark Knight progression into the Paladin, I think that's so great. And for the technology of the time, I really thought that it was a really cool story. So I still love it. Austin has never played Final Fantasy, but still loves FU. Well, there's other games too, by the way, that were, other JRPGs, not just Final Fantasy. Obviously, I've played some of them, not as many as Final Fantasy, but, I've played Legend of Dragoon, and I've played Xenogears and Xenosaga, and a lot of the other games that they call out in these games. So it's very, very good. Which form of Final Fantasy 1? The original, NES, all the way back. That's my favorite. With slots. Not MP. I've played Final Fantasy Origins, which I think was a remake of Final Fantasy 1, but it kind of included some quality of life upgrades, different types of potions, ethers, right? In the original Final Fantasy, you only had cure potions, which healed 50 hit points, and pure potions, which cured you of poison or status effects. There was no ethers in the entire game, and it didn't matter. There was no MP. So that version of the game is still my favorite. But that's it. It is what it is. I mean, there's a nostalgia element there too, but it is a tough game, and I do enjoy playing it. But it's really, really fun. Not that I have a problem with MP, but you know what? We can start right there. There's a lot to talk about in this game, and again, if you have a comment, if you have a question, if there's a topic that you want to talk about, bring it up in chat. That's what these live streams are all about. Is just I'm not on a mission. During a first look, I'm not trying to say I ignore the chat, but I'm trying to get through the damn book. But tonight it's Sunday night. We're just hanging out. All right, MP. I have talked on this stream or on this channel many times about how I don't like MP systems, aka magic point systems, aka PowerPoint systems. And most notably, this kind of came to arise during the 3rd edition D&D era when the Psionics handbook came out and they had these PowerPoints. And a lot of people said, we're going to go for, we love these PowerPoints because they give us so much flexibility and all this other stuff. That was kind of always a bullshit thing to me because people were like, oh, plus I don't want to track slots. And I was like, the thing about PowerPoints was it was really just a way at that time for people to munchkin and metagame. It was a way because if you gave people an option, be like, hey, do you want to trade in all of your lower level spell slots just to get a couple more higher level spell slots? All the munchkin power gamers would say, absolutely, of course I do. And PowerPoints gave you that, ability to do that. And so I really didn't like it. But the other thing was, it was still essentially a slot system. It was just done at a very granular level. And it became almost more of a pain in the ass to manage. And there were hundreds of points. So it was just way too much to manage. I never liked them. I thought it was just another horrible thing to track. And, and a lot of people too, the reason they liked them, again, going back to the Power Gaming Munchkin, was because they came back, at a fairly reasonable rate. And so it was like, oh yeah, every couple hours, basically I get all my power points left. And so, they like, people like that because it allowed them to just keep casting their really high level spells because they traded in all their power points for max level spells, which is, again, where power points and / MP systems really kind of lost me. And I never really liked them. This game does something different with them. Now, Vin says, not going to lie, Mind Points is an awful name. It is an awful name, and 100%. But I will say, I think I know why they called them Mind Points. And the answer is because they wanted everybody to use a singular resource instead of having different resource tracks. And even the non-casters use it as a resource for some of their more martial abilities. And the same way, and I think what they were trying to avoid here was having people, I don't know, have like a 4th edition reaction to it. I cannot help but feel like 4th edition was part of this, where, people were so mad because they were like, oh, the fighter's thing is it's like a spell. Fighters shouldn't have spells. He's not a caster. Why can't he only use it a couple times per day? So people had this like knee-jerk reaction to hating that stuff. By calling it Mind Points and tying it to willpower, you create this idea that it's like, oh, this is a representation of like how much mental focus and mental clarity you have. So not only does it apply for your spell casting, but it also applies for these really complex or advanced martial techniques. So calling it Mind Points, I think, sets the idea that it's not just magic, which I think was important in the way that he wanted to use the resource in the game. Will points, actually not a bad idea. I mean, I don't think that's a horrible, that would have been a pretty good compromise. The difference there is he still wanted to call it MP, because 99% of the time, you're not going to call it Mind Points the same way you're not going to call it Hit Points. You're going to call it HP and MP, and he still wanted it to just be called MP. If it had been called WP, people would have been like, why the hell isn't this just MP? So you basically were priced into doing MP. But I don't think he wanted to call it mana, because he wanted to do more with it than just make it the spellcasting resource. So, that was a big part of that. Let's see here. I saw something from Roll for Combat. Where are you at, Steven? I come to the stream and the first thing I hear is, and I don't like, never changed Derek. No, this stream is me all about how much things I like. Okay, so why do I like MP in this game? Number one, it is, as I said, a universal resource. From your spellcasters to your martial characters, every character uses this MP resource in order to sort of perform their sort of special techniques, whether that be a spell or whether that be a blade storm or something to that effect. Now, the spells tend to cost more MP because they tend to have a bigger effect, and the martial abilities sometimes only cost 5 or 10 points, which is great, which is fine. But I like that it is a unified system, and instead of being just this weird magic system, it is essentially a resource system that tracks how often you can do your big, bad, explosive, badass things. So that's the number one reason I like the MP system here. It's because it is universal and it applies across all the different character classes, which is great. Number two reason I like the MP, because the number isn't that big. Psionics in 3rd edition and some of these other spell point systems, you're getting into like 150, 200 points. I don't have time for that. A character who starts with a D10 in their willpower will start with 50 plus their level, and you start at level 5. So they will start with 55 MP, and they might have a couple of classes that give them some MP. So you might have, 60, 65. I think the very highest you could have, if you took 3 classes that were all spellcasters, that each gave you +5 mind points, you would have 70. And you get 1 a level. So when you level up, it's now 71. And there's a couple things that will extend that. But I think if you were really focused and highly dedicated to it, and you were a super spellcaster, at the very end of the game, when you were like level 50, my feeling or my gut instinct is that you would probably have around, I don't know, like 120 to 30, maybe 140 tops. And that's for like a super, super dedicated spellcaster. So it's a small number, but not just that. The costs of these spells are significant. One of the things that really bothers me is when games make you track a resource, but that resource is so plentiful and it's so ubiquitous that it's almost pointless to do so. The classic examples like tracking arrows. And again, in a certain type of game, that might really matter. But if you're in a game system, like, for example, first edition AD&D, where weight is everything and encumbrance is a huge pain in the ass, right? You can't just carry around 100 arrows. But if I'm playing a game where, let's say, 10 or 20 arrows is a light bulk, for example, and the game goes, yeah, you can have 100 on those on you. Why am I tracking that, right? So the last thing I want to do is have a game where it's like, oh, you get 80, 90, 70 MP. This spell costs 3. This spell costs 2. Instead, the heal costs 10 MP per target. And if you can target up to 3 people, then 30 is what a full party heal spell costs. 30. And your character might have, 60, 65, 70 MP at the beginning of the game. So a single big party heal is going to cost almost half of your mana. Every decision that you make with this MP system feels relevant. And it feels like it is an actual choice that is going to both give you a really great bang for your buck, but also, it's not something that you can just spam out for the rest of time. It's not like it's a resource that you're tracking just so that you can go through the sort of motion of tracking it. And I see somebody saying that Diomedes says they could have squashed all the numbers in this game so easily. They could have. You're right. They could have just divided everything by 5. But I actually completely agree with Ghost Boy here. I think the numbers are a happy medium of being big enough, because I think if the MP was like you get 12 MP, then and everything costs like 1 or 2. I think it would have felt too constricted. Even I, who don't like big numbers, I think it would have felt too constricted. I feel like Ghost Boy is exactly correct. I feel like it feels like the perfect medium. Obviously, we don't want 9,999. The other thing is, but it is a number enough to make you feel like you have some play with it. The other thing is, that is a really reasonable number for people, I think, to keep track of, especially since all the spell costs are in increments of 5. And it still gives you enough flexibility to have the occasional, you gain, a spell makes it cost 2 or 4 extra. And so I really, really like the MP. Now, I'm going to counteract Vin here. He says, my critique is the opposite. The numbers are too small. They don't scale enough as you go up a level, smiley face. And he's smiling because Vin is a classic, numbers go burr, right? He likes big numbers. I love that in this game, this is kind of a commentary on HP as well as MP. It doesn't scale that much. Again, at the beginning of the game, level 5 with a D10 in willpower, your character and a couple classes, your character might have 65 MP. At the end of the game with a D12 in your willpower. And being level 50, your character might have, 130 or 140 or something MP. So, you're not octupling or 10xing the amount of mana that you have. You are, maybe doubling it, give or take. And that over the course of from level 5 to level 50, I love that. I love that this game feels fairly flat. There is not a lot of extreme. Now, there might be in terms of the way that you can stack up skill bonuses and stuff, but the game doesn't just automatically make you go up, 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 up. And again, it is not a JRPG. It is a TTJRPG with plenty of inspiration from other game systems that make this something that is completely and entirely unique. You may remember a few weeks ago, I did a first look at Fantasy Age from Green Ronin, and I thought it was a fine game, but it wasn't for me. And I'll tell you why, because it wasn't doing anything for me that was new or innovative or was doing something in a way that no other game system had been doing it. This game is doing something new and innovative. It's based off of some extremely solid pillars, but is implementing them in a way that is fantastic. Now, the fourth reason that I love MP in this system, and this is the real reason I love MP. When I read this is what made me fall in love, honestly, with this entire system. Those of you who have watched this channel know that I am a fan of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I'm also a fan of games like 13th Age and Dungeon World. One of the things that 4th edition did is it said, okay, over here are your powers, your fireball, your acid arrow, your ice spikes, right? If you're a caster. And they were on that at-will encounter daily progression that most people are aware of. But a lot of people looked at those and said, but where's all the cool, weird shit that you can do as a spellcaster? Where is your, rope trick spell? Where is your pass wall spell? All right. 4th edition said, look, we're not going to make you choose. We get it. D&D has evolved. Okay. We've come out of the dungeon. In fact, if you're playing in the dungeon, you should probably be playing a game system that's better at, caring about the dungeon. Maybe like, 1st edition D&D, AD&D, or BX D&D. So 4th edition was basically said, look, for combat, we're not going to make you pick between getting a cool lightning bolt or fireball spell and having this cool ability to make ghost sounds or make an illusion of a stone wall or be able to, rope trick and take your party to a pocket dimension. And so what 4th edition did is it changed it into the ritual system. And these, by the way, is one of the things that I think Pathfinder 2nd edition took from 4th edition, but didn't take it enough. Okay. There's a lot of spells in Pathfinder 2 that I think should be rituals. And the whole advantage of rituals is you get this great ability to not only have all your cool wizardy shit that you can do, spellcaster shit that you can do, but you don't feel like you're, giving up the ability to be really cool and awesome when a big fight comes out. And I think that's important. I mean, these games have a lot of combat in them. Even a low combat game tends to still have more than a couple fights. And, in a combat, these stakes are very, very high. And so 9 times out of 10, people feel compelled to, load up their slots with combat spells. And of course they'll say, but you could take those non-combat spells onto scrolls, which is fine, except now it's like costing you money. And that is one of the problems with 4th edition D&D. Like any modern role-playing game, 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons expects that your character is going to have the right armor bonus, the right weapon bonus, the right saving throw necklace or whatever at the certain level, which means you need your money. You need your money in order to stay mathematically relevant. The problem is that in 4th edition D&D, rituals cost money to acquire, which is a one-time cost. It's not the worst thing in the world. But then they required an additional cost every time you use them of a not insignificant amount of gold. So when you wanted to do a rope trick, you needed to provide, 100 gold pieces or whatever of rare, magical rope or something. And so that cost, it was a disincentive. It sort of said, hey, don't use this because you need the money. Now, at some point over the intervening years, Aaron, Mr. Smith from this channel, really got into the idea of using rituals in 4th edition and I think he implemented this in one of his house ruled for e-games, where instead of using money, which is this sort of important resource that you need for other factors in the game, he used healing surges as a cost to cast rituals. Now, healing surges are obviously how much hit points you have, but not really, right? It's hit points in the bank. It's not hit points in your wallet. That's your hit points. Healing surges are healing you might use. But more important than that, they return. They're refundable. You get them back when you rest. So you're not like permanently down resources by using healing surges. And I thought this was a fantastic idea, albeit a little wonky at times because, you do want to keep your healing surges around. And of course, 4th edition had these very specific rituals. You have to take this ritual, you have to take this ritual, you have to take this ritual. Cool idea. Let's go over to a game like Dungeon World. Now, Dungeon World operated a little differently. Dungeon World, the wizard playbook, had an ability on it called Ritual. And it basically said, when you are in a place of magical power, state what you want to do. The GM will give you 1, 2, 3, or 4 requirements in order to make this thing true. You might need to, get a unicorn's horn, and you might need to get a king's blood, and you might need to do it on the first light of the full moon, right? Those are your 3 requirements. Oh, and you need to provide, a magical wand that is capable of summoning fire. If you bring all those 4 things together, yes, you can open up a volcano or whatever it is. You could just do whatever you want. There's no like, oh, I picked this ritual from this list in the book, and that's what I've got in my spell book. You can just magically make shit happen, but there's a little bit of a process involved. I loved that system in Dungeon World, but it felt a little, well, number one, it was a little cumbersome, right? Like it was great for like the big, awesome mega rituals. Like I'm going to, seal the Dark Lord in his prison forever. But it wasn't really good at doing some of that more mundane stuff like we had seen in 4th edition. Like, oh, I'm going to make a rope trick, or I'm going to make a Leomund's tiny hut for us so that we can be comfortable while we camp. But at the same time, 4th edition had this problem where it was too defined. It was too structured. If you didn't have Leomund's tiny hut ritual in your ritual book, you couldn't use that ritual. So it was like another version of a spell book. Fabula Ultima, the final thing that they do with MP in this game, is they have a ritual system, which is, quite frankly, the best I've ever seen. And it allows spellcasters who have access to this ritual magic to essentially, on the fly, create a cool, powerful, magical effect. And there's a table in the book. It's not a list of all the rituals you could do. The tables in the book help you determine how difficult the ritual will be and how much MP the ritual will cost. That's right. The cost of the ritual is MP, meaning it's important, it's valuable. Just like when Aaron took rituals in 4th edition and made them use healing surges, it's important, it's valuable. It's not something you just carelessly throw away, but it's also something that isn't going to permanently destroy you in the long term. When you rest in this game with a capital R, you get all your MP back. So while MP is really important, it is also very, in a sense, easily replaced. And that means that because the ritual system is open-ended, but also not this big, massive, quest of the ages like it kind of is in Dungeon World, you end up in a situation where characters can have just a handful of spells, right? That when we think of spells, your character might have, I don't remember exactly what they're called in the game, but, your character might have, fire, bolt. All right, we had a super chat and then we had a tip from GM Scott.
GM Scott tipped $10. Wait, super secret system stream Sunday? How long have you been going?
I just started at 7, GM Scott, so you're totally fine. You're totally fine. But thank you for the tip. Yeah, it was a super secret stream Sunday. That's right, exactly. System stream. There's 5 S's in there. Talking about Fabula Ultima, GM Scott. Vin with Super Chat $2 says the difficulty and clock tables are works of art. Yeah, I mean, we'll circle back into that, but they fabulous, and it feels right, and there's so many things about them that just work, and I really, really, really like. It was really, really good. So what ends up happening in this game system is your character might only have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 spells, in the sense of like, I'm going to cast Fire, I'm going to cast Blizzaga, I'm going to cast Quick, I'm going to cast Heal, right? And they're very defined. They're for combat. They do what they do. They restore hit points. They do damage. They inflict a status effect. It's very much a combative power. But for everything else in the game, you have rituals. And you can basically just make it up. And while there are, of course, guidelines, this is a game that isn't afraid to trust its players and its game masters to get it close enough, to get it right, sorta. It doesn't need to be an exact thing because it's not trying to balance it against some organized play. It's just trying to give you a sense for what is fair and reasonable in the context of the game. So let's take a look here. I'm going to actually... Let me hop over. We'll pull this up just because we're talking about it. Okay. All right. I think it's 1, 2. Wow. I can't believe I got that right. Okay. So in the game, there are, through various classes, there are 6 different disciplines that you can acquire. Most spellcasters start the game with ritualism, but the other ones are available for essentially 1 skill point. And, you know, basically this is sort of describing what can you do with your rituals. Instead of having a laundry list of rituals in your ritual book and say, yes, I can do A, B, C, D. I cannot do F, G, H, I. Oh, I wish I could do this. Oh, you can't do that. Why? Oh, I didn't take that one. Okay. Instead, if you have the elementalism discipline, and, you know, to be clear, if you are an elementalist, okay, here we go. Look at that. Here we go. Here are the spells of elementalist. And what do these mean? This means for combat. All right, let's just call it what it is. It's for combat. This is where you have your fire, single target fire damage spell. This is where you have your AoE lightning bolt spell. This is where you have your AoE frost spell, right? Fire, lightning, ice. Classic Final Fantasy style games. And you can see here that there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's only 12 elementalist spells in the game. And you know, you might not even get them all, by the way, but you might end up with 5 or 6 of them. And you're like, oh, so that's it? That's all my character can do? I can do fire damage, lightning damage, and that. Well, no, that's where the rituals come in. Because if your character picks up elementalism, then look at what they could use it for. You could walk on water. You can shape rock. You can snuff out fires, cause a rainstorm, summon powerful cyclones. Everything that you would expect or want an elementalist to be, someone who could control the elements. I mean, this was part of the reason we got so excited about the kineticist. I mean, yes, there were a lot of really cool options. I really appreciated all of that. But one of the things I actually really, really liked about the kineticist was that they started with base kinesis, right? With the ability to actually, you know, manipulate and shape your element that you have. And this game goes kind of a step further and says, yeah, we're giving it to you all. You know, you don't have to worry about having water breathing, feet to fins, you know, whatever, air bubble, levitate, you know, stone shape. What you just have elementalism, and now you can basically do anything you want. The only restrictions, which the game very, very clearly lines out, is They can't cause direct damage, right? So you could open a chasm below your enemy's feet. You might trigger an avalanche, which, starts rolling down the hill. But you can't be like, target that character, deal 50 damage, right? That is for your spells. That is for your combat type spells. You can't inflict or remove status effects. You can't cause characters to lose hit points or magic points, mind points, inventory points. You cannot replicate the mechanical benefit of an existing spell, but it even says, however, narrative effects such as teleportation or flight, even if some skills grant them. And you can't do permanent abilities. Aside from these, most rituals are fair games, but the stronger the effect you seek, the more tragic the consequences will be if your ritual goes wrong. Because what would this system, it sounds like, wow, we get anything we want and we can make up a ritual. Yeah. The problem is if you fail the check to perform your ritual, then you can have disaster fall upon you. And of course, it's up to the GM. But, the classic example would be, if you're trying to cause an avalanche to crush the enemy army and you fail the check, maybe, an earthquake rips open at your feet and you and your party, risk falling down into a chasm rent into the earth. And again, they give you some examples here. This is the potency. And by the way, just so we're all on the same page here. Now, granted, this is extreme, but, weaken a divine entity, prevent a catastrophe, right? I mean, we're talking, and look at the areas here. An entire fortress, an entire mountain, an entire village, right? We are talking about massive scales here. And they give a great example here of some sample rituals. Like, for example, you might erect a barrier of energy to shield a castle from an avalanche. This is a ritualism ritual of extreme potency targeting a huge area. If the ritual fails, you might cause a burst of uncontrolled magical force and trigger a supernatural cataclysm. So, literally, you could be playing this game and the mountain top above the castle breaks open, maybe as some like elder earth and elemental god is reborn, right? Ragnaros or Deathwing is reborn. And, obviously that has huge long-term effects for your campaign. But in the meantime, 1 million tons of rocks and boulders are now sailing down the mountainside, threatening to completely crush the castle and everyone inside of it. And your spellcaster, possibly with the aid of their group, begins weaving magical barriers and domes and basically goes full like Doctor Strange and encapsulates the entire castle in a glowing, thrumming shield of magical energy interlaced with magical runes that glisten like gold or silver. And the rocks, when they strike the shield, it sort of dissipates and the energy cracks and the runes flare with light. That's in this game. Now, did you have to take the shield castle from an avalanche spell? No. All you needed was the ability to cast rituals, period. That to me is really, really cool. And the fact that it ties into this universal resource of MP, it means that characters will use these. They will, because MP is something that you can get back fairly easily. But it's not free. It's not free. If they use these rituals all the time, then they're not going to have MP to cast their really cool spells, right? And that's what's really, really cool about this, is that it makes the players have to do interesting choices while still giving them, the options to do so. And by the way, someone mentioned the rituals. It's easy to notice that the MP of rituals can be rather high, the cost. In order to reduce this cost, the spellcaster may provide an especially rare or powerful ingredient, and doing so will cut the MP cost in half. And if there's no time to prepare and the ritual is urgent, an item or ingredient the GM deems suitable can be sacrificed to allow the ritual to take place. But perhaps finding it is its own adventure. So this is that situation where, maybe, it costs 200 MP and your character doesn't have that. But, you basically say, GM, like, I take my crystal staff and I hold it aloft and I unlock, the power within it, sacrificing that and allowing the light energy of the crystalline staff to infuse the ritual. And now the cost is 100 MP, which is something that my character might be capable of paying, right? And so that is where, again, it leads to just awesome storytelling, which is what's so good. And I really appreciate it. Whoopelstein. How many mana would you say it would be to summon Titan? I mean, do you mean like the Esper Titan or the Summons Titan? To be fair, there is a class that just does that. And to answer your question, Whoopelstein, I will show you because, that's what we're doing here. So if we look, one of the classes, and if you're new to this game, realize class is a terrible name. They should not have used it. These things should be called jobs. Because your character starts with 2 or 3. In fact, you cannot take 1. The game makes you take 2. You start at level 5, by the way, and you basically divvy these up between different classes. And you can have up to 3 classes. And then once you master a class, aka get level 10 in it, you can't take any more classes in it. But you can now pick up an additional class. A character at the very end of this game could have 5, 6, 7 classes. So it's really more of a way to think of it as like all of these are kind of like archetypes, and you're just kind of diving into them to pick up different elements. Your identity, who your character is, what your character is something that you just describe and write down. They even give you a really cool table. Like, for example, my character might be a bounty hunter. Let's see. Ooh, I'm a former Imperial bounty hunter in disgrace, right? That's my character. So like, what class are you? Are you, no, my class is former Imperial bounty hunter in disgrace. That's my character class. And what I do is I basically just take levels one at a time in these various classes to sort of flush out or fill out the concept that I have of who that character is as expressed through mechanical game terms. Now, to get back to Whoopelstein's $10 super chat, one of the classes that you can take is called the Arcanist. Okay? And you can see here it says also Avatar, also Chosen, also Summoner. Okay? And when you become an Arcanist, you can take this power called Bind and Summon, which gives you a Arcanum, which is like a summon in this game, right? And they have here, I don't know what they have in this game. It might be in the other book, but they have different examples of Arcanums. And of course, you could make your own as you want. I don't know if they have an Earth one in here. It might be in the high fantasy book, but we'll just pretend that, Arcanum of the Oak is what we're talking about here. Okay. So we can see that the domains here are earth, plants, and poisons. But if this was Arcanum of the Stone, right? Is a tower one? Judgment, protection, sacrifice? Maybe. But anyways, this Titan, Arcanum of the Stone or Arcanum of the Earth, the domains might be earth, metal, strength, right? Not just literal things, but also metaphorical things. And guess what? This would give us a really cool power that we could use in combat, which is great. We want to be able to have really defined rules that we can use when we're in combat. I think we can all agree on that. We all like that. But your class also lets you take this skill. Ritual Arcanism, or Ritual Arcanism, I would pronounce it Arcanism. You may perform rituals of the Arcanism discipline as long as their effects fall within the domains of one or more arcana that you have bound. So when you take that, you gain access to the Arcanism discipline, and now you can produce magical effects based on the arcana that you have bound. So while you're in combat, you can just spend your mana point, summon Titan and have him do, his damage attack or whatever he does. And it's going to be balanced against other spell attacks, and it's going to be totally reasonable. But if you take that one ability, which is just 1 point from one of your levels, hell, you start with 5, and usually you gain at least a level like every time you play. Now you could call upon Titan to do a bunch of different things. And what would really matter is, what is the potency? What is the area? So if you wanted to summon Titan to, look at this, block a passage. All right. And maybe it's, the size of a small room or clearing. So that would be difficulty 7, MP cost would be 20, times 2 for a small area, which is 40. And there you go. That's our ritual. And now we summon Titan, who like emerges from the earth and brings down the stone ceiling and collapses the tunnel behind us, sealing it with hundreds of tons of earth and dirt and rubble. And we got to do that because we had access to the arcanum of earth, and we couldn't do that otherwise. And so, it is a very satisfying process. And I should point out that you can even do these during combat. And you can see here, they have a whole flow chart here for using a ritual during conflict. But outside of conflict, we're not too concerned about exactly how long it takes to perform these rituals. We know it takes a certain amount of time. It's not instantaneous, but it's not 5 hours either. Inside of a conflict, aka a fight, a chase scene, a tense negotiation, a escape from the collapsing building scene, right? Instead, we get a clock. And basically what we have to do is myself or people in my party need to use their action for the turn to sort of help cast the ritual. And when they do so, they'll make a check and they start filling out the clock. So if we were in the middle of a chase scene and I wanted to drop the tunnel behind us so that the enemies couldn't follow us, and I wanted to use my powerful connection to the summon Titan, that would create a 6 clock, or in other words, a circle with 6 different blank segments. And me and my party members could use actions to fill that clock in. And once that clock was filled up, then I could perform the ritual and potentially seal the cave. And that is really awesome. I'm a big fan of that. Hey, we got another super chat from Self-Confessed Cynic. Question from earlier. I'm sorry if I missed it. Does the current economy promote an encounter rest cycle, or is 5 IP enough to stop that? So I think the book answers that pretty well. And the book says, I believe, that the sort of pace of combat, conflict, or whatever, is based on the idea that you will fight, I think, either 3 like normal conflicts, sort of 3 easy battles before you might rest, 2 hard battles or normal battles, or 1 hard battle. So if you were to go hard battle, no rest, into another hard battle, that might be possible, but my guess is that would be pretty tough. Or if you had a hard battle and then a couple normal battles after that, I think that might be pretty tough. So I don't think it goes encounter, rest, encounter. I will say that if you have the big knockdown, drag out boss fight, that is probably, that's probably it for the day. So I don't think it does it. Also, it's 6 IP. And what Vin is talking about here, we'll go back to this here, is in this game, you have a very, very basic system of using resources. Each character gets 6 inventory points, or IP. Everybody. And You can't just refill them when you sleep. You got to go, you got to be in a town, or you got to, have access to a little merchant or whatever. But the game basically doesn't make you track, oh, I have this many elixirs to recover mind points. I have this many remedies to recover hit points. No, the game just sort of abstracts that and says you have 6 inventory points that you can essentially pull out of a hat, like a rabbit out of a hat. If you spend 3 IP or 2 IP, you can pull out this item and use it. And obviously you can do that even in combat, in a conflict. But that is your action for the turn. I cannot stress this enough. You get 1 action on your turn. There's no movement. There's no grid. There's none of that. But if you want to drink something on your turn or use it on a different player, that is going to be your action for the turn. But it can be quite effective. It's automatic. There's no check. It just works. And so I find this to be a fantastic resource system, because now we get to track this. We kind of have 2... inventory points. Okay, so I'm getting off topic here, but the other thing that Aaron did in his 4th edition D&D home rules is he gave characters the ability to use their healing surges. Remember how I said he could use those healing surges to cast rituals? Well, Aaron also let you use healing surges to recover your daily powers. One of the things that people always gripe about 4th edition is Fireball's in the game. It's there. It's a daily power. That means you get 1 of it. And once you cast it, it's gone. So Aaron used the idea of, hey, well, a spellcaster could draw upon their inner resources, subtract healing surges, and put that into their spell slots. They could also, if you take damage, this is what 4th edition, what healing surges are designed to do normally, is convert healing surges into hit points. That's what they're supposed to do normally. But what Aaron let us do is not only could we convert them into hit points, we could also convert them into spells or abilities or rituals. Do you see where I'm going with this? Inventory points are healing surges. That is what they functionally are. They are a simulationist, quasi-simulationist nod to healing surges, but what they basically let you do is they let you convert one resource into other resources. And in standard 4th edition, it's just hit points. But like I said, when we played 4th edition, the last, a couple years that we were still playing 4th edition, we were usually playing with Aaron's set of house rules. And in those house rules, you could convert healing surges into hit points. You could convert them into more spells and powers. You could convert them into rituals, just like MP and HP, which is exactly what items and item points do for you. So very, 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 very cool. Very, very, very compelling. Potion of Elixir is 6 IP. That's pretty sweet. I see Elemental Shard does a fixed amount of damage. It doesn't seem to scale. Neither do the healing potions. Are hit points flat regardless of level? You gain... So your hit point equation... Oh, no. Should I bust out the whiteboard or should I just describe it? HP, long story short, is very flat. You get your stat. Uh-oh. Did my camera stop? We'll try changing the... Oh. My camera froze. Camera froze. All right. There we go. GM Scott, your question broke the feed. So the way it works is for hit points, you have a stat called Might, and you'll put a D6, a D8, or a D10 into that stat at character creation. That's going to be what you roll whenever you are asked to roll Might. The value of the die, 6, 8, or 10, is multiplied by 5. That is your starting hit points. So if you have a D10 in your Might, your character would start with 50 hit points plus your level. And in the particular, you start the game at level 5, but it is essentially your might times 5 plus your level, which means you might start at, 55 hit points. 10 levels later, your character would be at 65 hit points, right? It's not a huge amount of scaling. So I think the most you could start with, I think, is 70. And that's if you like specifically build for that. Maybe there's some other skills you could take, but I think 70 might be the example. Hit points do go up. And by the way, something that they talk about in this game is it says here, let me hop back over. You have what's called a group sheet. Let me see if I can bring up the group sheet actually. So this is the group sheet, and what this lets you do is it lets you, at the beginning of the game, this is what everybody in the entire party can use their inventory points on. They can use them on elixirs for MP, remedies for HP, elemental shards, or magic tents. But the game gives you several blank spaces. And they say here in the game, this information is also present on your group sheet. The sheet also features blank spaces where you can write custom inventory items that are unique to your world. So maybe in your world, maybe it's a project. This game, like Blades in the Dark, I mean, it definitely shows it's Blades in the Dark DNA here, has the idea of long-term projects. Maybe your spellcasters, your tinkerers, you all work together and you create, the high potion or the X remedy, and you make it so that one creature recovers 100 hit points and it costs like 4 IP or something. And you're like, oh yeah, that's a lot, right? That's sweet. And so that is definitely something that they want to have in the game, talk about having in the game, and I think it's really, really, really cool. There's no Phoenix Down in the game, but I could see a world where maybe you have Phoenix Down in your game, and I think that wouldn't be completely crazy. Who GM'd? I was the game master, and Kaz, Bob, Smith, and our buddy George were the players. So the game itself works really, really, really well. It has so many cool advantages to how the game works. Let me bring up a character sheet and let's sort of maybe like go through this, right? Maybe that'll help us. What's it called? Fabula Ultima. There we go. Okay. I am going to switch this over to that. Boom. There we go. All right. So here is our character sheet in its all of its beautiful landscaped glory. Our character starts with an identity. And we talked about this before, but the idea of an identity is what is your character's actual class? And I think, what did we say? We said former Imperial bounty hunter in disgrace. I didn't realize it, but we just made our character Boba Fett. So that is our character's identity. All right. And that sort of helps us understand not only what classes we should be taking, but it also helps us understand what is our character all about. And I should also point out that anything inside of this box, the traits box, you have 3 traits. You have identity, theme, and origin. Also have, believe it or not, a mechanical effect in this game. All right. We'll talk about it when we get down here to Fabula points. But Fabula points are basically this game's version of hero points, or inspiration. And you can use them to re-roll your check. In fact, you could do it multiple times. But in order to re-roll, the game makes you go through one tiny hurdle. You have to invoke a trait. And that basically means you need to stop, even if it's just for 1 or 2 sentences, and you need to describe why either your identity, your theme, or your origin is allowing you or giving you the ability to sort of make this attack work, or make this spell work, or make this check work. Because that is a perfect example of where like the sort of there's that fictional mechanical interface. It is not just I spend the point, I get to reroll. No, you have to make that little bit of effort to actually sort of get the little benefit that you want. So if you want the reroll, you need to tag these. And something I told my players was this is where having a couple different adjectives in your identity actually is to your advantage. Because imagine if my identity was just, I could have had my identity just be bounty hunter. And sure, there's going to be a lot of situations where I'm in a situation and I want to invoke my identity. My identity is bounty hunter. So, I'm good at this. And so I'm going to get a reroll. And the GM says, of course. But by adding some additional information to your identity, you're actually kind of metagaming. Okay. You're actually kind of car-opping your character, because I've added things like former Imperial, right? So now if a situation comes up where it wouldn't really make sense that a bounty hunter would get to reroll, but I can point to the fact that, oh, I used to work for these people. I might know these people. I might know their procedures. I might know the secret passcode. All of these things now are a tool in my toolbox, which is going to give me that much more of an option in order to sort of be able to reroll and get better dice results. So the difference between putting something like former Imperial bounty hunter in disgrace and versus just bounty hunter is, really, really, I think, important. Okay. The next thing that you do when you make a character is, let me go down to making a character here. Is we select our theme. And the game suggests that you pick one of these default motivations or themes, but you obviously could create whatever you wanted to. But the key thing here for this is basically, why is your character, what defines your character? Why is your character an adventurer? Why is your character on this quest? What drives your character? And they give a great way of describing this. They say, if you had to build an entire scene around your character, the theme would be the focus of that theme, of that scene. And so I really, really like how they phrase that. So my character is this our character is this former Imperial bounty hunter. What drives her or what drives him? Is it guilt? Is it justice? Is it mercy? Maybe it's mercy, right? I wish to help others regardless of their past misdeeds. Maybe my character is trying to atone for his past ways, and trying to, maybe he's guilty. I wish to atone for my past mistakes. Perfect. That's exactly what I was trying to go for. So my character is guilt. That's what defines him, right? And while bounty hunter might be very useful for me in combat, guilt might be something that I get to use in non-combat situations. And that's also really, really important. Lastly, origin. We talked about this a little bit on the first look, but I cannot stress this enough. Part of the rules of this game include sitting down with your group and building a world first. Okay? We skipped it here, but look, all of this stuff here, these are all like world building prompts. Your GM does not make a game and then the players show up. When you sit down for your session 0, there is no campaign. If you're playing the game rules as written, people might have some ideas, but it's going to be kind of created as a group. And similarly to identity or theme, this also gives you a strong meta reason to really define where your character is from. So if I say my character is from Babel, right? That doesn't really do a whole lot for us. How am I going to invoke that? Well, what if I go out of my way to describe while we're doing the world building? Oh yeah, Babel is, and you wouldn't necessarily put this here. You might put this into your world building or onto a note card. But I go out of, with other people around us, we go, oh yeah, Babel sort of has, shunned magic, embraced magitech. They are some of the most, they're engineers, tinkers, builders, right? They're very like engineering focused, mechanical focused. Awesome. See, by describing what my homeland is like or what my home city is like, can you see it? When I'm playing and we need to get, an airship that's broken fixed, or we need to, does someone know how to drive the train? Can you get this, cannon to fire? My character can go, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I roll low and I go, I'm going to spend a Fabula point and I am going to invoke my character's origin. And because my character is from Babel, I've been around this stuff my whole life. Of course, I can pick a lock. Of course, I can fix that, that broken electronic device because my character grew up around this stuff. So again, it's not only fun, but it's also an example of something that we talk about a lot in this game. And this is why this game Smith and I'm not even joking. Like, this might be like the game that we really dig into. I mean, I will always love Pathfinder 2nd Edition because I think it is a really fun, crunchy game, the grid-based combat. I love 4th Edition, but I'll be the first to admit it can be difficult to play sometimes because the support for the game isn't there, and Wizards of the Coast has basically tried to kill it. So I love 4th Edition, but Pathfinder 2nd Edition, if I want that sort of crunchy, tactical, grid-based combat, that's the game for me to go to. I love Legend of the Five Rings for the world building and for the incredible and rich and deep story time that it builds. And there are some games, too, that like that I haven't gotten a chance to play yet that I would love to just because I love those worlds. Games like Dune 2D20. And, of course, I love basic old-school games. But, because I love dungeon crawling. But in terms of a game that sort of fits in this niche of really high G, really high gamist, really high narrativist, very low simulationist, this game takes the cake. Beowulf. I mean, again, I don't think I'm going to surprise you here, but Emmanuel, who wrote the book, the game designer, very clearly called out Fate as one of his core inspirations. So traits are basically aspects from Fate. Okay. Gabriel says, tangent, but the 4E system has some nice systems for Foundry and others. I've been looking into it recently. I am aware that they have been doing work on it, but I'm also aware that short of like doing some sort of like weird, wonky, crazy, potentially illegal, like importing, you still have to manually put everything into 4E because there is no master database. And I know I've not really explored it myself. There are like potentially workarounds for that, but technically you're not allowed to do that. I mean, again, I'm just trying to be good about that. So right away, we've got 3 core things about our character, right? Who we are, what drives us, where we're from. And that's it. That's your background. And you know what? You don't need anything more than that. That is just really, really, really cool. Like that's really, really, really all you need. And not only that, it's not just bullshit. These are the things that you're going to need to do if you want to invoke a Fabula point to get a reroll. Diomedes says, how long does one combat take? Well, Diomedes, the game creator says in the book that a combat should be between 3 to 5 rounds. That's like how long you should expect them to go, 3 to 5 rounds. When we played, and keep in mind, we are relatively seasoned role-playing game players, but keep in mind that when we played Friday night, half of the play group had literally just bought the PDF like that day. One of our party members had never read the book at all. They just showed up. And the fourth party member had bought the book maybe earlier that, the previous day and had made a few characters at home just for sort of shits and giggles. So never played before, brand new characters. And I'm not even kidding you, okay? We sat down to play. Bob started talking about his 3D printer. We did not truly get underway making characters until 7:30 p.m. We then went through an entire character creation process of a brand new system that no one had ever played before. And it's not exactly what I would call a rules-light game. There were some really crunchy decisions to be made during that character creation process. And characters were coming up with backstories and intriguing elements about who their characters were. We were learning about the connection. We had to retcon a couple times because we started off with thinking that Kaz was the prince, but it turned out that Kaz and Aaron were brothers, but Kaz had gotten sent away due to a time shift, and everyone thought he was dead, so his younger brother became the heir apparent. This all just happened during this process. We then proceeded to play the entire quick start, which has 9 scenes in it, including 2 combats, including like a big boss fight. And we finished, I think, before 11 p.m. So that means in 3.5 hours, a brand new group made brand new characters, played through 9 scenes of an adventure, including 2 combats in 3.5 hours. I think we had combat rounds that were honestly under, I mean, the entire combat round, the entire table, under 2 minutes, under 3 minutes. Like there were plenty of turns that were, 10, 15, 20 seconds long. Your turns are short but sweet. They're very powerful, but you just get one thing. That's it. You just get to do the one thing. So it's very, very, very cool. Yeah, combat was very quick. It's very smooth. And honestly, shocked at how well it worked. Shocked. And there's little nuggets here that I think, goes without saying, but like the game uses a popcorn style initiative, okay? The GM doesn't roll initiative. Instead, the group rolls initiative as a group. It's called a group check. So each person is not rolling their own initiative. Basically, one person rolls initiative for the party, and then combat starts. If the initiative is a check, it's DC 10, or what the game calls DL, or difficulty level. DL 10. If the PCs beat the DL of 10, they get the first action in the first round. If they get the first action of each round. If they lose, the monsters get the first action of each round. And then it's a you go, they go, you go, they go, you go, they go, back and forth until everybody has gone. And then the round ends and you start again. And it actually creates some really cool, interesting tactical opportunities, because certain abilities and buffs last until the start of your character's next turn. So if your character goes really early in the initiative order, aka your group picks him to go first, and you cast this really sick buff on everybody in your party member, and then everybody gets this really cool buff, and then in round 2, your party instead picks for you to go last in the round, meaning your buff will continue to be active for all the rest of your party members. So it's a really, really, it's not a huge, like, counting squares type tactics, but there actually is, I think, a fair amount of positioning that actually really does matter. Yeah, Austin, I literally just said that. Exactly. It doesn't feel like combat light, like you're just kind of making it up and rolling dice. It really does feel like the tactical decisions that you're making are really, really important. So that is how your character builds their traits. Okay. Then, after we've gotten our traits down, we pick some of our starting classes. Now, again, we can go in different orders that we want to. So I'm actually going to skip ahead to do our attributes. You have 4 attributes in the game: dexterity, insight, might, and willpower. And you can choose how you want to distribute your dice accordingly. D8's all, D10 and a D6 in one, or 2D10 and 2D6. So again, what's really cool about this system, and again, I want to reiterate this, is the way there's no skills in this game, right? There's no skills. So in this game, your character, whenever they want to do something, the GM, and potentially with the player's impact or input, is going to pick 2 attributes that you're going to roll to add together. And you can pick the same attribute twice. So you could have a dexterity plus dexterity check. You could have a dexterity plus insight, dexterity plus might, a dexterity plus will. And you could also have an insight check and or a might check. So long story short, if you add them all up, you end up with, I think it's, 3 plus 2 plus 1. Yeah, you end up with 10 different combinations of ability score modifiers. And that gives you a lot of range of what you want your character to do. And you know, even as a group, we intuitively understood this. There's no list of spells, there's no list of skills that say this is what you must do. The game does give you some examples and some advice, but ultimately none of that matters. What matters is, does this work for you and your group and you as a GM? And very quickly, you know, like we were giving example, and you can tell when a game has strong resonance when players who are being exposed to the game for the first time all sort of just go, oh yeah, that makes total sense. And like one of the examples that we gave, and this is in the book, but we were just kind of like talking about it, as I was like, for example, if your character is trying to, you know, push a massive boulder out of the way, you know, so that the party can get by, you might say that is a might plus might check. And everybody was like, yeah, that's awesome. And Bob, I think, or somebody said like, but what would a might check plus something else look like? And I was like, yeah, but okay, but imagine instead, you know, a portcullis is falling and your character grabs it and he's got to hold it, you know, and she's straining and she's trying to hold on to it to give the villagers time to escape. And everybody kind of saw where I was going with it. And I said, maybe that's a might plus willpower check, because it's not just about the strength of your body. It's about the strength of your will and your determination. And everybody's like, yes, that feels so right. That feels so accurate. And so there's a little bit of back and forth that you can do. And you know what? One time you might do something and you say it's dexterity plus insight. And the next time you do it, you say it's dexterity plus willpower. And you know what? It doesn't matter. Like the game just lets you just hum along, and there's no like, I got to look at my skills. I got to look what I can do. I got to see what I can do. It's just, you just go with it, you know? So why do I like that? Because it's very reminiscent of 2D20 system. It's very reminiscent of games like Dune or Star Trek Adventures. It's very reminiscent of Legend of the Five Rings, game systems that I really, really love, because they have this idea of combining 2 attributes to kind of reflect what your character is doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it, and have that affect the game. I think it's just an absolutely fantastic situation. Yeah. Beowulf says, I really don't like that a PC with a D6 plus D6 is twice as likely to crit than a PC with D6 plus D12. It's one of my biggest gripes about the system. I think I'll just add a D20 to the roll and trigger crits on a 20. That is probably a horrible idea, Beowulf. And I'll tell you why. Actually, I asked the creator this, and he goes, the percentages on the math are so insignificant, I just don't really care. The issue is you don't want crits to happen that often. Opportunities can, I think, they're really powerful, but I think that they will grind the game to a halt if they're happening too often. And even having a flat 5% chance of that happening, I think, is potentially problematic. So I would advise against that, because I think it would get out of control real quick. So then after you got your character's attributes, and again, these are all derived from your attributes. Hit points is whatever value is in your might. So 10 times 5, 50, plus your level, 5, so 55. And MP is your willpower, which for us is a 6, times 5, 30, plus your level, 5, so 35. And everybody starts with 6 inventory points. And again, you start at level 5. And then we have to pick some classes that define who our bounty hunter is. How would you build a bounty hunter? A former Imperial bounty hunter, right? What class features and abilities do you think a bounty hunter should have? that's up to you. There's no right or wrong answer. The game requires that you take at least 2. At least 2 classes. But maybe our bounty hunter is... Let's see. Maybe our bounty hunter... Oh, where the hell is it? There we go. Okay. Maybe our bounty hunter is... I thought there was like a list of all the classes. They probably do it all the way up here, don't they? Probably. Because they're stupid, yeah. All right. Maybe we make maybe our bounty hunter is a sharpshooter. Maybe they use a gun, right? Yeah. Can you get a gun sword? Bounty hunters have to get a gun sword. So the fantasy supplement, the first expansion that came out, Shadram, has rules for what they call custom weapons, and you can like shift them between different forms, so that you can have like a ranged version, and then you can have a melee version. So they basically have custom weapons that let you do that. Anime's mom, what is the crit system? Just when all dice rolled match the highest value? You need to get doubles, but it's got to be 6s or higher. So double 3s don't do it, double 2s don't do it, double 4s don't do it, but double 6, double 7, double 8, double 9, double 10, double 11, double 12 is a crit. And KC, that's exactly right. A lot of the things that I talk about in this channel, I like conversations. I like being able to have those conversations. Like for example, you're in a moment and a character is trying to, really intimidate this character. And you say, oh, okay, well, like, how are you doing that? Like, are you using your biting wit and clever tongue, or are you just being imposing? And they go, no. I'm being like calm. Like it's like a deadly serious calm where like I'm actually like my stoicness is almost sort of overwhelming them. And you're like, oh, okay. So like with willpower, and you're like, yeah, with willpower. I'm like, okay, roll insight plus willpower. And everyone goes, yeah, that feels right. And we as a table, not only do we build that mechanically, but we get a much clearer picture in all of our collective minds. In fact, I bet you right now, you at home can imagine, I don't even know what this pretend character is, but you can imagine what their demeanor is and how they look. If they were on screen or in the pages of a novel, what would be kind of written there or shown there? Because we understand that there is this important connection between the mechanics and the fiction. And I think that is what is so awesome about this game is it really works to that end. Still not sold on the crit system. I'm not sure why people are so upset about the crit system, especially since in this game, crits don't do like double damage or anything silly like that. It gives you a narrative opportunity is actually what it happens. It allows you to kind of change up the game a little bit. So the critical system here is a little bit more narrative than simulationist. We're used to critical success meaning like you hit them really hard, right? But this game doesn't do that because when you roll high on a damage, remember in this game, when you attack with a weapon and you do damage, the damage that you deal is based off of the high roll from your, I don't know where anything is in this book yet. 70. Yeah. Oh, there we go. 122. Thank you. The damage that you do with a weapon is based off of the high roll of your dice roll. So, for example, if I shoot somebody with my pistol, I'm going to roll dexterity plus insight to attack them. And then whichever of those two dice, assuming I hit, if my roll was high enough, by adding those two dice rolls together, assuming I hit, I would take whichever die was the highest, aka the high roll, and I would add 8 to it, and I would do 8 physical damage, plus 8 physical damage. So if I rolled a 9 with my dexterity, my damage would be 17. So rolling high means you do more damage. The critical success for me is not the sort of critical that we're used to. The critical success system for me is just a convenient shorthand to have a secondary process that is running in the background of your game, okay, without requiring additional CPU cycles to randomly interject narrative exchange moments. The crit system really is more of a random chance for player and GM narrative shenanigans. It's not a crit as such. And rather than track it in some other way, the game kind of tricks you and says, we're just going to use the dice system that you're already rolling. So that way you don't have to pay attention to it, except when you get doubles. And then when that happens, your character or the party will get an opportunity, and it's a moment for us to kind of interject and add something new and unique to the game. It is not a critical hit in the Pathfinder 2 sense of I hit him in the right spot and I did a bunch of damage, right? It's more narrative than that. And it's kind of like when we talk about Powered by the Apocalypse, and people sometimes don't understand, and they do a bad job of this because they give the names of these moves and they give characters stats that sound like strength or whatever, that make it feel like it's like simulating some sort of like, how strong are you? How well can you fight? But that's not what the moves in Powered by the Apocalypse really are doing. The dice are more like, we've come to a critical moment. Who gets the conch here? Who gets to decide what happens? Is it the players or the GM? We'll roll dice and we'll find that out. It's not really simulating how well you attack. It's really just a tool to determine kind of who gets their way, the GM or the player. So I would say critical systems in this game are very different from what you might otherwise normally expect. But going back to what I was talking about, we might build our bounty hunter in a variety of different ways. We might pick up sharpshooter because we imagine them having a gun, but we might also pick up tinkerer. After all, we did say that they are from Babel and that has a very strong technological background. We can certainly pick that up. Or maybe we want, rogue to sort of represent some of our scoundrelly bounty hunter ways. Or maybe we want wayfarer to represent the fact that we've been all over the world, tracking bounties. Thiago says dark blade plus white wayfarer. Okay. Dark blade could be a different. So you went a little bit more dark with the bounty hunter. I was kind of imagining like a gun toting kind of bounty hunter in that sense, but you're thinking more of like this, armored hulking presence. Anyways, point is you get to decide that, you get to pick that. And then every time you pick a class, you get to get a new cool ability from that class. And so if you put a couple levels into a class, you get to pick a couple abilities, and so on and so forth. It is a very, very rewarding, I think, character creation process. It does not overwhelm you. Each class only has 5 things to pick from. You can't pick them all. It's really, really clever the way that the game is built. So, again, huge, huge success in my personal opinion. So let me kind of talk a little bit. You guys tell me, like, spoiler alert. I could talk a little bit about what happened when we played through this, if you guys are sort of interested. So if you're thinking about playing this or whatever, maybe hold off. You know what? Actually, I'll do. So yeah. So again, if you think that you might play this quick start at some point or whatever, go with the flow. So, okay. So this quick start, The way that this, again, it's built, it uses a bunch of pre-gens, but we made our own characters and sort of just kind of winged it and worked them into the story. But the game starts, or the quick start starts with you on an airship. Now, I'll read it to you. Our story begins on a small airship sailing above the forests surrounding the city of Dunova. Piloting the airship is an old man named Leon, an old mechanic who begrudgingly accepted to transport you near the ancient ruins known as the Crater of Megiddo, a once great city of magic that was devastated by a magical cataclysm in the past. The crater still hides many powerful and terrifying secrets, and troops from the neighboring Empire of Alonia have been spotted in the area. Why are our heroes heading there? Well, that's a question that one of the PCs can answer, for it was their father, King Roland, who decided not to take action against Alonia. But PC disobeyed his orders and gathered a group of exceptional individuals to personally investigate the situation. So at this point, we just made characters and sort of tied each other to one another rather than go with the pre-gens. And again, this walks you through so beautifully in this system, but it says the tops of the trees part and you can see the crater below, an oddly circular pit descending into the ground with what remains of the ancient stone buildings now lying in tumbled rubble, and the once glorious waterways and aqueducts that once twisted through this once great city, now spiraling down in great cascading rapids and waterfalls into unknown depths in the distance. By the way, I don't usually read word for word from these things. I always just kind of add my own stuff to it. I really recommend people do that as well. If you just always just read the prepared text, you'll never get good at not reading the prepared text. Just as Leon prepares to descend, you hear a rumbling noise coming from deep within the crater. And suddenly, a ghoulish purple beam of dark, coruscating energy stretches outward and crashes into the left side of the airship. In a moment, the beam of energy is gone, but the airship lists heavily to the left side. You can see barrels and other unrestrained items on deck start falling over as the airship leans and lists. You can hear the sound of splintering wood falling from below and the crackle of flames from the blast of energy. "Son of a cactroll!" yells Leon. "I swear this is the last time I'm going to drive you bunch of adventurers around. We'll be lucky to get down in one piece." And now it says, you understand that a crash landing is inevitable, but what do you do to make it less disastrous? So I'll tell you what my PCs did. So this is an introduction to checks. Now there's no skills in the game, so your players just describe what they do. They just say, I want to go do this thing. And then you, the GM, and with your players, maybe try to figure out something that seems equitable, but ultimately you, the GM, have the final say is, what 2 stats do you roll? And that's it. You just, and the dice are a D6, a D8, or a D10. And if you play for long enough, you can eventually get a D12. So you're adding maybe D8 plus D6, or you're adding D8 plus D10, or maybe 2 D10. But either way, it is really not asking a lot. We had a member chat coming in from Gossamer. Says, just catching up from the start now, but I wanted to say that seeing another FU stream made my week. Thank you so much. Well, Gossamer, playing FU made my week. It was a really, really fun experience. It felt like it was the perfect balance. I mean, I love narrative games. I do. I love them. I love Monster Hearts, and I even love Root. I mean, we're playing this actual play, and it is going crazy. We are having so much fun, and I'm loving every bit of it. But I grew up playing D&D. I grew up with combat and, rounds of combat, initiative. There is a part of me that always wants to keep going back to that. That's why I like Pathfinder 2. But the problem is, every time I go back to those games, I always suddenly find myself rolling my eyes because the game is so literal and it takes itself so seriously. And it's like, I feel so constrained by the lack of freedom that I had in these other games, right? So then I go back and I pick up a new PBTA game and I start playing it and I'm like, man, I wish I could just level up and get a cool new power, right? I wish I could get a cool magic item, right? As soon as I switch, I start to miss what the other thing had. And there are some games out there, maybe Fabula Ultima isn't for you, but if you want that game that sort of straddles the world between narrativist and gamist, there are games out there that are like that, right? Legend of the Five Rings, I think, is a very narrativist, gamist, and even kind of simulations game. 13th Age is a fantastic game that really, really does this well. But Fabula Ultima has the one advantage, which is I grew up playing Final Fantasy, and I love it. I love the genre. I love that this game isn't just trying to be a good game or a good role-playing game, which it is. It is also trying to emulate a type of game and a type of genre that I really, really like. So, back to our press start. The airship has just been struck by a purple beam of energy from the descent depths, and the airship is now listing. A crash landing is inevitable, but maybe our players can do something about it. Shadram, have you ever done a 13th Age stream? I think I have done several. There is at least one video, which is like 2 or 3 hours long, which is just about 13th Age. Maybe somebody can link it in chat, but if you go to our videos, maybe I'll just do it. Whatever. Screw it. We definitely have one. Patreon. Here we go. Found it. Oh, it actually wasn't that bad. All right. There you go. That was part of a live stream that I then edited out, and because there was other stuff that we did before that. Yeah, it was the orc stream. So like the original stream was like 4 hours long. We talked about the orc for like an hour and change, and then we did 3 hours of 13th Age. So that is your 13th Age stream that you're going to want to go check out. So what happened? Well, Bob, who was playing Kane was his name. Character's name was Kane. Bob's character was a sort of a kind of a swashbuckling type character with he had a firearm and a bronze sword, kind of a dashing character that wasn't wearing any armor. And his character was a sharpshooter weapon master, the former captain of the legendary Storm Knights. Bob goes, I push Leon out of the way and I grab the wheel to try to set us down and find a good place to land, right? And I was like, awesome. That's awesome. Cool. So obviously dexterity, how well can you pilot this ship? What should the other thing be? And Bob was like, well, I'm looking for a place to land. It's not just about setting it down. It's where I'm setting it down. I said, perfect, Bob. Insight. So dex plus insight. Yes. Thank you, Bob. The Sky Riders. So Bob rolled a dexterity plus insight, and then I pick a difficulty level. Now, difficulty levels in this game basically range from 7, which is easy, 10, which is the default. If you don't have anything better to do, just go with 10. 13 for something that's very hard, 16 for something extreme. So it goes in increments of 3. And I said, oh, this seems like it's a reasonable thing to do. It seems like it's a good thing to do, a smart decision. I'm going to reward Bob with a lower DC. And instead of 10, I'm going to make it a 7. Because I think that idea is clever. I think he's using a good combination of abilities. And in a crashing airship, that makes some sense. So I made the DC 7, or difficulty level. Bob rolled it, got it, cool. Party got 1 success. Then Kaz, who was playing sort of a dark entropist summoner of an ancient arcanum of the void, kind of a dark, shadowy character, said, I'm going to call upon sort of dark spirits or dark energy and try to shield our vessel from damage. And I thought, okay, that's fine. But I'm like, but that doesn't feel like that's maybe as good of an idea or as relevant idea. I'm not going to punish you by making it DC 13 or DL 13, but I made it DL 10. And I'm like, okay, so this is just you summoning up this energy and deftly, maneuvering it. And he goes, no. This is just me like commanding the energy. And I said, okay, let's make it double willpower. So he rolled double willpower and he failed. Okay, so that's a failure. Now, in this game, when you fail a check, you could potentially have consequences. Checks aren't just free rides. There's there's definitely an element here of that sort of PBTA Blades in the Dark belief structure, which is, if you're making a check, it's a big deal and it should matter. And so because Kaz failed that check, I described it as him drawing in the dark energy. And again, I can't help myself, but I am a PBTA GM, and I have played a lot of PBTA. But one of the GM moves and principles of PBTA is sort of announce future badness, right? Or kind of give them a sneak preview of something that they wish wasn't true, right? I'm trying to remember the exact. I'll pull it up. The exact right name. Reveal an unwelcome truth. That was what I was going for. Reveal an unwelcome truth. And I said, Kaz, as you're summoning this dark energy, you realize that it's your dark energy is resonating with the dark energy that is coming down from the crater. And it kind of concerns you. It kind of frightens you a little. It leaves your character shaken. And so what I did in that moment is I gave his character the shaken status. I'm going to flip back over here real quick. And we'll talk a little bit here about statuses, but I'm just going to tell you, in my personal opinion, this should be your go-to thing as a game master. Is if a person fails a check and you want there to be some sort of narrative consequence, this to me is just like playing a conditions-based PBTA game like Avatar Legends or Masks, where, in Avatar Legends you have like angry, guilty, insecure, right? But that game is about emotions and feelings and Team Avatar, moving along. This is a little bit more of an adventuring game. So we have slow, dazed, weak, shaken, enraged, and poisoned. You'll note that enraged is kind of like a tier 2 status because it affects both dexterity and insight. What do these statuses do? Quite simple. When Kaz, let's pretend that Kaz had a D10 willpower, because he did, by the way. I think these were Kaz's stats. I think he went specialized, which meant he had D6 dexterity, D6 might, but then he had a D10 insight and a D10 willpower. And just because we're here, that means that his base hit points would have been a 6 times 5, 30, plus his level, 5, and be 35. Whereas his magic points would have been his base willpower, 10 times 5, 50, plus his level, 55. These do get modified by your class. I was just showing you this for purposes. So his character became shaken. And when his character became shaken, his willpower now only counts as a D8 until he gets rid of that shaken condition. If his character were to also somehow become poisoned, it would go down a further step, all the way down to D6. A die cannot go lower than a D6. So even if he was weak and poisoned, his might would still be at D6. That being said, I might make the difficulty level higher, or I might give you a penalty because I'm like, yeah, you can't go lower than a D6, but you are pretty messed up. Anyways, long story short, what we did there was not only did I, give him a consequence for a failed action, but that little tidbit that I just threw out there because, I thought it was interesting, would kind of end up being kind of like a major part of the rest of the adventure. It's not something that was in this quick start. It's something that we added as a group, I added as a GM, that made our game experience unique. I mean, long story short, we'll cut to, just kind of a spoiler alert, but when they fight the final boss, Kaz remembered that dark energy was sort of his dark energy, and he used that to his advantage to kind of give him what I call narrative tactical positioning. All right. So that was Kaz. Then Aaron, who was playing a white mage healer, who also was an elementalist, who had the power of wind, was like, okay, I'm going to call upon the spirits of wind. I'm going to have them flood up from below. I'm going to have them race around the boat and try to, cushion our landing, guide our ship, help Bob steer the ship. And I said, that is fantastic. That's a great idea. I honestly do not remember what George did. But again, we were like, okay, so what are we doing here? And I'm like, well, I think you should clearly be, most of the time for spell casting, it's like insight or willpower. And I think we ended up agreeing that this was a dexterity and insight, because we're like, it's more about you sort of, using your nimbleness and your dexterity to sort of almost like you summoning the spirits is easy, but now you actually have to kind of control the spirits, almost like riding a wave. It's like a dexterity game, right? Like using the spirits in the right way to give the ship the support it needs. So Aaron ended up making a dexterity insight check, and I believe he succeeded. Then, yes, George, who was sort of our guardian Steiner kind of character, was looking out ahead, trying to see if there was going to be any problems. He was specifically basically like, running to the top front of the ship and keeping an eye out and yelling out about what, we're about to crash into this tree. Or, and so he rolled insight plus insight because it just felt like that was the right thing to roll. So long story short, a couple of the party members failed. A couple of the party members, I think maybe just the one party member failed, and a couple of them passed. And so as a result of that, I basically said, look, I was going to deal like 30 damage or 40 damage or 30 damage to everybody, but I'm going to reduce it by 10 for each successful check that you all made. And so since you made 2 successful checks, then everybody just takes 10 damage from what is essentially a pretty rough landing, but a reasonable one. Okay. And that was it. That was our first scene. Everybody made 1 check. There were some consequences for failure. There were some damage taken, but everyone agreed that even just right away, it felt smooth, it felt natural, it felt quick, and everybody at the table had a very, very strong mental image of what that scene would have looked like in a movie, of the airship, falling through the sky, the one PC knocking the old man out of the way so that he could take the reins of the airship, and, the white mage who can control elemental spirits at the front of the ship, calling up these sort of, Zephyr like, green and white energy spirits. It felt very magical. It felt very, it felt like fantasy. So that was how scene 1 ended. Now in the quick play in scene 2, you basically kind of have a little bit of a rest or an interlude scene. And in the game, this is where your character can form bonds. Okay. And bonds are another way that your character can use these Fabula points in order to improve their dice rolls. Now you can have up to 6 bonds, and they basically can be with people, places, things, organizations. They could be with party members. They could be with villains. And when you have a bond, so let's say that my character had a bond with, what do we got in here? Damian Williams. I can define my relationship with Damian in terms of admiration or inferiority, loyalty or mistrust, affection or hatred. Like maybe I really like Damian, but I also mistrust him. And interlude scenes and rest scenes allow you to build up these bonds with your fellow PCs, with the world around you. And I do think that they made this a little simplistic, but I totally could see this being something that is easily either with a future expansion or some kind of house rule where if you wanted to sort of tweak this, you could, because honestly, these exact the words here don't matter that much. What matters is how many emotions do you have with this bond. In the case of Damian Williams, I have 2. I have mistrust and affection. And in game terms, that means that the strength of this bond is 2. And when I call upon this bond, maybe for good or for bad, I get to add 2 to my total value. And that's after I know what I roll, and that's after I know if I passed or failed. And I can do that by spending one of these Fabula points. So again, you can see that Fabula points, like inspiration or like hero points, can allow you to get better dice rolls or get re-rolls. Cool, awesome. The distinctive difference is you have to work for it just a little bit. And it might not always be 100% an option, because maybe nothing on your sheet actually, comes through. So, for example, I have affection for Damian Williams, and maybe we're in a combat and Damian Williams just got attacked, and it's my turn, and I go, I'm like, I rush over and I attack that monster, and I miss by maybe 2 points, and I go, I'm going to use a Fabula point, and I'm going to invoke my bond with Damian, and that's going to add 2. Okay, well, how are you and why are you invoking your bond? Because, for all of, as much as I doubt his past and I question his loyalty, I have to admit that, I care about him greatly and deeply, and seeing him threatened by that monster overpowers any feelings of misgivings, because right now in this moment we are a team and we are brothers in arms, and I have his back, and I go in there and boom, I now changed my miss into a hit, and all I had to do was inject just a little bit of role playing. Not a lot. I've talked about that on this channel before. Sometimes when you're in a combat, like the last thing I want is 5 paragraphs of descriptive text of, then the green energy from out into space. Not every action needs to just have all of this behind it. But you and I both know I'm guilty of this too. I'm guilty of this in my own games. I'm even guilty of doing it. You can very quickly, especially once you're in some sort of conflict or combat scene, even maybe like a chase scene or something like that. Once once the dice are rolling and there's hit points and lives on the stake, it can be very easy to just forget about role playing. It can be very easy to just be like, I attack, he attacks, I guard, he casts a spell, I'll take 20 damage, he does this, he does that. And there's a part of me that likes that. It keeps the game feral, keeps the pace moving. I don't mind that. But what these bonds and traits do is interject just a little bit of role playing. Everybody's going back and forth really quick, and then it's like this kind of like, whoa, hey, hold on a sec. You got to tell us a little bit about your character and how you're feeling right now. And then you do that, and everyone goes, okay, you get to use your Fabula point, you get to get your bonus. Boom, let's go back to the quick pace nature of it. And that is really, really awesome. It is, it's like spice, or salt. Too much spoils the dish. But without it, it's dull and it's bland. You need just a little hint of it, a little dash of it to really bring the dish to life. And that is how I feel about, in most instances, about like role playing in FBT in that way. And I think it works out really, really, really well. So in the second scene, we had an opportunity for the characters to sort of form bonds with one another. And, the characters went around and they kind of described about who they had a bond with and why they might have had a certain emotional connection to them. I think that, George, who was sort of that playing, oh God, what was your character's name, George? Dennis. George's character's name was Dennis, Denys. Dennis had a strong connection to Tristan, who was played by Smith, because Tristan was a young prince and Dennis was an old grizzled soldier who saw in him the future of the kingdom. I kind of got like a Barris and Selmy vibe from Dennis. And he said, I have great admiration for Tristan, and I would like to think that if the campaign continued, or maybe it was affection, but I would like to think that as the campaign continued and Dennis, it was loyalty. Okay, there you go. So this tells us that Tristan feels loyal. I'm sorry, Dennis, played by Lance Quagmire in the chat, felt loyal to Tristan, but he doesn't necessarily like love him like a son or like a brother. He just felt like this is the royal heir, and it is my job to be a loyal servant and protect the crown and protect the crown's legacy. So the nature of my emotion is based in kind of responsibility or duty. Now, that bond could change throughout the course of the game, right? Maybe Tristan comes to really, truly care and love the young prince and see him as the son that he never had, or maybe a son that had died many, many years ago, and sort of take him in as a sort of almost father figure, type of relationship. But maybe it doesn't, right? So that is where a bond, again, it's not a whole lot of detail, but it provides that fun little bit of information. And in our case, we kind of got around and we talked about it. And as Lance is helping me here point out in chat, we arrived at that for Dennis, he had a bond of 1 loyalty to Tristan. So pretty cool little scene. And it was role playing, right? And it wasn't just role playing in the we're talking in character sense. It was role playing in the sense of all of us players were sort of figuring out what is the story and making sure that we're all on the same page. That is its own form of role playing, where you're not exactly like writing dialogue or scripts, but everybody is helping to paint a picture and make sure that we're all on the same page. So it worked really, really well. So then we went to scene 3. And in scene 3, we get something that is a little unique to this game. I'll read it because it's cool. All right, so the group is on the airship. They're taking stock of their situation, and they're preparing to head down into the depths of the ruined city of Megiddo. The scene changes. We now see the inside of an ancient building, perhaps a temple. It is a dark room, illuminated by an ominous, glowing, dim purple color. Supporting the roof is a massive bronze pillar in the center of a great, wide open room. The bronze pillar is decorated with ancient symbols, arcane runes that stretch the mind and defy explanation. But we also see that the pillar is cracked in some places. Great vertical rents, jagged, have begun to form in the base of the pillar, which are seeping out rays of energy. We hear the clacking of armored heels on the stone floor. And then we see a close-up of a hand reaching out in a silver gauntlet to touch the bronze pillar. The scientists in Alonia were right, a feminine voice says. The compass was left buried here ever since the disaster. And now that we have it, dear brother, now I can bring you back to life for good. 2 shadows stand against this purple light. One, like a massive, giant, hulking beast, is clad in great plated armor. The other is shorter and thinner, wielding a long spear. It seems our heroes do not have much time left. What was that? That was a cutscene. That's actually part of this game, is cutscenes. It allows you, the game master, to basically show the players, not the PCs, but the players. It allows you to show them what's going on, what's the stakes. If they're, maybe you put down a clock after you do that, and you say, okay, here's a clock. It's ticking down. They're trying to do the thing. It's sort of a way that you can kind of steal the story and kind of interject and add your own elements. But in a beautiful way that this game works. We've been talking about these Fabula points the entire game. Now, these aren't like hero points. They don't go away at the end of the session. In fact, you actually get to keep them. Now, you can see that if you start with none, you get 1. But otherwise, you don't get +1. If you start with 3 or 4, you just start with 3 or 4. If you have 0, they give you 1. Note here, though, you get a Fabula point whenever a villain makes an entrance. So a brand new Fabula brand new character made at the beginning of the game does get to start with 3. Well, guess what? We just had a scene. It was a cutscene, but I, the GM, just introduced 2 villains with a capital V. These are your big named NPCs, probably potentially future bosses. And guess what that means? I got to do something cool. I got to steal the story. Maybe I got to say, oh, look, shit's coming. Things are going to be dangerous. Here's this clock. Here's this front, right? Whatever you want to use, whatever sort of gaming technology you want to use, I'm basically saying, like, I am putting you under pressure. I'm kind of cheating. So everybody in the group gets 2 Fabula points because I just had 2 villains in my scene, right? Because that I'm really raising the stakes here. I'm bringing those characters, these villains, these potential equals to the party members into our adventure. And the party gets rewarded. They get Fabula points, which is going to let them have the kind of re-rolls and bonuses that they're going to need in order to kick those bosses' ass. This, people, is what we call a beautiful cycle, right? I introduce cool, awesome villains. The party gets the increased tools that they need in order to kick those villains' ass. But in order to use those points, they have to invoke their traits and their bonds in order to role play, which is then going to create new opportunities for me to create new villains, which is then going to increase, and so on and so forth, right? It's a beautiful cycle. So really, really cool. All right. Then we went to scene 4. Now this is very a minor issue for me. I like games that have good group checks. This game has a group check system where basically you say, okay, we're going to make a group check. Instead of everybody making their own roll, we're going to make a group check. Now, to be completely blunt, no game that I've seen does this better than Blades in the Dark. Forged in the Dark, Blades in the Dark, Scum and Villainy has, in my opinion, the best group check mechanic. But this game is obviously inspired by that, but it comes close. So in the scene, in the adventure, the group now has to make their way through the abandoned city and get down to the bottom of the crater so they can find out where the purple glow is coming from. So in the quick start, they go, we're going to introduce you to how a group check works. And the way a group check works is you pick one PC to be the leader of the check. They're going to be the final one to make the roll. Everybody else makes a check using the exact same stats that the leader chooses. And they have to roll against 10. And the idea here is, I think, the reason why everybody has to use the same stats is so that you just don't get, PCA uses their best stuff, PCB uses their best stuff, PCC, uses their best stuff, and everybody just is like, I'm going to look through the rubble using my insight. I'm going to lift up bricks and throw them because of my insight. It's like, rather than do that, which just kind of it leads to it feels kind of cheesy and bad. The game just says, no, the leader will pick. And there's a little bit of, gaming that goes on to that, because you might pick something that's really good for you as a leader, but maybe the rest of your party members are shit at that. And everybody gets a chance to help you out. And they all quickly make a check at the same time, simultaneously, always against difficulty level 10. If they succeed, you get a +1. So everybody rolls it. Okay, you 2 passed. I got a +2. I'm going to make the check, add 2. Did I succeed? Yes. If you succeed, everybody succeeds. If you fail, everybody who helped you fails. So this is how you handle we're climbing the mountain. Cool. Who's leading? I will. Climbing a mountain is probably, I'm going to say, dexterity and might. Oh, yeah, everybody agrees. So, I could also see an argument for maybe a different one, but they went with dexterity and might. I have to be agile, nimble, but also just strong enough to pull myself up. Okay, great. Everybody's supporting. Roll dexterity and might. Okay, you failed. You failed. You passed. Cool. All right, leader, make a dexterity and might check, but add 1. If they pass, everybody passes. If they fail, everybody fails. Boom. Simple. Done. Easy. Good. All right. So the group was successful, and they were able to navigate through the city and make their way down into the depths. But before they could reach the temple, scene 5, 2 arms. And by the way, as we're doing this, again, players have all this stuff on their character sheet. They have these identities, these themes, these origins, these bonds. A lot of my members, several of my members of my party are in the chat. Okay. I'm not shitting on them, but I'm going to just say a lot of people stepped up. a lot of people in this one shot of a brand new system, I felt like we're doing a better job of presenting and characterizing their character, their PC, than they do in a game like, Pathfinder 2. And I was here. I was really there for it, but we weren't, slice of life chilling in the, tavern, just bullshitting. Like, we're out on an adventure, but I felt like I got a chance to really learn about these PCs, and it was really, really cool to see that. So then we get to a fight, and the group fought a floating hexai, a demon that was summoned when the magical city fell into cataclysm, and 2 Elonian Magitech soldiers. And this is where we learn something really important about this game. It is no joke. Spoiler alert, you can't die in this game unless you want to. If your character goes to 0 hit points, you're out. There's no unconscious, there's no dying, there's none of that. If your character goes to 0, you're out of the conflict. But when you go to 0, you get a choice. You can choose to sacrifice your character, in which case you do die. But you go out in a blaze of glory, and you can work with the GM to basically accomplish miracles, right? Big, big campaign level stuff, right? Or you can surrender. And when you surrender, it basically means that maybe your character is unconscious. Maybe your character is taken prisoner. Maybe your character is, thrown off the side of a cliff and presumed dead. Maybe your character gets lost into another dimension. Maybe right. It all depends on what you, the game master, and the players are feeling at that moment. But the long and the short of it is your character is out. But for being a good sport and surrendering, you get 2 Fabula points when you surrender. So in some sense, when you get taken out, the game kind of rewards you, and it kind of says, hey, that sucks, but it happens. Here's 2 Fabula points because you surrendered. But let me be clear about this. You always choose whether you're going to surrender or sacrifice. That means that the GM cannot kill you. They can only make you surrender because you have to choose to sacrifice. That means that your character can never die like a bitch. And it means that when your character does die, it will be for good reason, and you will go out on your terms and accomplish something awesome and amazing. Is this realistic? No. Is this kind of what you would want in a simulationist dungeon crawling game? Of course not. Is it perfect for this kind of high fantasy action RPG, Final Fantasy, JRPG emulation? Of course it is. And so that, it's the classic example, right? Like in the Final Fantasy game, if a character dies in a cutscene, they're dead. If they die in combat, it's just a minor inconvenience. And so because of this, it means that, like our Northern Reaches mega campaign, which is, by the way, still going strong. We're about halfway through it now, actually. We started, I think, in late April, early May. So we've been going for about 4 months, and we're going till the end of the year. So we've got another 3 or 4 months left to go. So, Frostjack sounds good. Look forward to it. Oh, you're going to catch up later, but you're here for hanging out now. Well, welcome, Frostjack. And yeah, Damien, I do think more and more great games are doing that for sure. So Twixter asking a really important question. Would you guys play this again on stream? Twixter, I'm not even kidding. This could be our next AP after Root. I don't know how and when we'll get a chance to play it, but the game really captured my attention. It captured the attention of my players, and that is worth something. And I think there's a lot of things that the game is doing right. And, I think there is a definite possibility that this could become part of our actual play experience. Because, again, we have our Friday games, which is like our own personal home games. We're playing an Abomination Vaults Pathfinder 2 campaign, which I would like to finish and see finished. Right now they're pretty much finished up with level 5, so they still have level 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to go. Although level 10 is really just big fight against Palkora. And we also have our Legend of the Five Rings game, which... oh, there it is. Kefka. FUAP. Let's go. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I think, again, you got to get the right group. You got to get the right players. But it is a really, really fun game. I'm not going to lie. I was thinking already about like how I would do the graphic overlay for the Fabula Ultima stream, and I just had like this mental image, right, of like, you know, different, like the PCs would be like have their characters lined up like in a JRPG, and then like try to control it on my board to have like, you know, the people do their things. You know, I just thought that was really, really good. I was just kind of geeking out, you know, I was just kind of geeking out. And I thought that was pretty cool. KC says, can't wait. I won't. Spoiler alert, KC. Austin, you might be 100% right. You might only be able to sacrifice when a villain is present. That makes total sense. I mean, I don't think you would sacrifice if a villain wasn't present. At the same time, Austin, like if there was you know, if your hometown was about to be destroyed or whatever, by like a massive explosion, maybe you might be willing to sacrifice. But yes, you are correct. No. At least 2 of the following have to be true for you to sacrifice. So 2 of these 3. 1, a villain is present on the scene. 2, your sacrifice would benefit a character that you have a bond towards. 3, you believe your sacrifice would make the world a better place. So if 2 of those 3 are fulfilled, you can sacrifice. With everything that you have said, do you think that this could be done as a rotating GM campaign with each player dedicated to one city? Absolutely. I think this game could work fantastically with a rotating GM because it is super low/no prep. The creator, and again, I've been in his Discord. He's amazing. He is awesome. This fine gentleman, Emmanuel Galetto, has been awesome and incredible. And he basically just goes on and on. You know, people come in there like, oh, well, you have to prep because of this. And he's like, no, like you really don't. Like, I'm telling you, like I try to design this game so that you can throw this stuff together. And, you know, if it's a major villain that you want to have, you know, prep in advance, that's fine. Get that villain ready. Get it in your back pocket. Remember, the game gives you the ability to use a GM scene, introduce a villain, give everybody a Fabula point, and explain how that villain works in there. But it's up to you as the game master to sort of make that make sense. So if you have this awesome situation, you can totally do that, you know? Neil, thank you.
Neil tipped $3. Could you get someone to make a Japanese anime style theme song for FU? That would be fun.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think if we did that, we would definitely either use some of the very talented musicians that we have available to us through our Patreon, or we might go out to Fiverr. It'd be cool to get our own sort of like, you know, very Final Fantasy, you know, sort of Nubo inspired music, right? I think that would be pretty sweet. Beowulf, it was great seeing you. Thanks, buddy. We'll take care. Self-confessed cynic says, would be pretty cool to see Smith GM it. You know, Smith was like, so he's like, originally he was like, am I running this game? Because like I was describing on Thursday how I was making character. I never make characters, people. I don't care at all. I was making characters. I was imagining identities. I was like going like, oh, this would be so cool. I would take this, and like reflect my character. And like, what if that's happened? Like maybe I go down this road. Like, again, I'm all about not builds. I'm the opposite of Vin. I don't want to be level 50 of the one character and I pick it. I have all of my abilities picked out at level 1 or level 5 for the rest of the campaign. I do not do that. I never think more than a step or 2 ahead. What I like to think about is if this happened, how would I respond? Right? Like if a party member died, how would my character, how would my character change? Maybe a party member dies and I go, oh, I'm going to start taking levels in Dark Knight or whatever it's called, Shadow Knight or whatever, because my character turns to darker powers, promising it will never happen again. You know, he will embrace the darkness so that others may live, right? My soul can be forfeit. Like I think, and I like get excited about like, man, I really hope cool, awesome, epic, tragic things happen in the course of my character's life that I get a chance to respond to, that I get a chance to change my very idea or concept about my character. Because for me, the fun of playing a PC is discovering, along with all the other party members and my GM, who my character is going to be and what my character is going to be. The way that a lot of characters are made, it's like it's already made. It's a gift, but it's wrapped in a bunch of layers of present, and you already know what's inside. So you're just peeling back the layers until you get to what you want. I don't like that. That's why I always talk about how I don't like builds, because that takes all the fun out of it for me. So anyways, so Smith was like, Derek is really excited about this. Do I have to GM this? And I said, I'll GM it because I'm obviously the most familiar with the rule system right now, but is this a game I would play? 100%. There are many games that I would much rather GM. I think a lot of people say this, but I'd much rather GM Pathfinder 2 than play Pathfinder 2. It's pretty much true of most D20 games. I'd rather GM it than play it. I'd rather GM Forged in the Dark than play it. I'd rather GM Powered by the Apocalypse than play it. Exception being Monster Hearts. I've had so much fun the times that I've gotten a chance to play Monster Hearts. But even that, it's like I'd want to play it and game master it, I guess, at the same time. But like like Star Trek or Dune, like the 2D20 games, like I think I'd probably rather be a player there, or maybe at the very least it's a pretty strong. But I would say with this game, it's probably 50-50. Damien says, if Kefka doesn't stick around, I'm going to have to seriously consider my Patreon support. Wow, we got a big fan of the crazy clown, huh? I thought that was a pretty cool little ad. That was pretty fun. Exactly, Isaiah. Go with sprite animation for the win, Like put my cast into like Mid-Journey, but say like do it as a 8-bit sprite animation and see what it comes up with, that'd be kind of fun, right? I bet you could get Ben on board. Yeah. Is Ben a Final Fantasy fan? As far as I'm pretty sure Ben has been a big player of, Final Fantasy 14. I think he used to play that MMO quite a bit. I'm pretty sure. And I'm pretty sure he's a Final Fantasy fan. Maybe not to like the level that some people are, but I think he is a fan. Yeah, me too. Again, I don't know how we're going to get this game to the table. I don't know if it's going to be through through the actual play, or if it's going to be through our home game. Obviously, our home game has the disadvantage that you guys don't get to participate in it, and it seems like there's a lot of interest in this. And quite frankly, the game seems like it's picking up a lot of steam. It just won, gold for best rules, I think, or best product, best game. I can't remember which exactly it won. I should look it up. Let's see here. I have no idea. Why did it put that there? There we go. It won. Come on, your website needs to load. It won gold for best game, and it won silver for best product. Yeah, so product of the year. So very, very cool. Winning best game is, that's like the award in my personal opinion. Because obviously production matters. Product includes like the art and the marketing and the font and the design and the layout and the form factor and all that stuff matters. But at the end of the day, these are games. So best game is going to be, kind of the best game. It would be so cool to see you play, Derek. I don't know about that. I honestly think that there are people who are good at being players, and I think there are people who are good at being game masters. And I think I'm a better game master than I am a player. Not because I'm a problem, or not because I'm like a pain in the ass or problematic, but I don't know. I feel like I just don't bring as much as a player as I do when I'm a game master. So I don't know. Frostcheck, as someone who hasn't played either Final Fantasy or Fabula Ultima, when Fabula Ultima calls itself a TTJRPG, does that J mostly just mean Final Fantasy, or does it take things from the broader JRPG market? It's mostly Final Fantasy, but the list of inspiration includes basically a whole trope of JRPGs. Chrono Trigger, Bravely Default, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Fire Emblem, Grand Blue Fantasy, the Mana series, Secrets of Mana series, Octopath Traveler, Persona, Radiant Historia, Shadow Hearts, Suikoden, The Last Story, Legend of Dragoon, Vagrant Story, Xenoblade Chronicles, Xenogears, etc., etc. So there's pretty much a big long list. I mean, the guy who created it definitely is a fan. Is it more fun than 13th Age in your opinion? Hard to say, Carzoni, because I've only played one session. But the combats are really bad. I mean, 13th Age combats are really quick. These combats are really, really quick. And I'll be honest with you, I've been playing this game for a long time. If combats go more than like 20 or 30 minutes, I'm getting bored. So I feel like for my personal taste, this is probably more fun than 13th Age. But if you don't like things like having to, if you don't like all these sort of really, really in your face narrative elements, 13th Age has those narrative elements. They're just a little bit more subtle. And I think that the traits, the system of leveling up and getting these abilities feels more impactful than it does in 13th Age and getting your new feat. But at the same time, I think the biggest difference is 13th Age is just 10 levels and this is 50. So there's a big difference there in size and scale. I also am impatient. And when I play RPGs, I kind of want to level up every session. And like people, like you think of that in terms of D&D and D20, but like look at a game like Root, which we're playing, right? Every session you ask, did I fulfill this drive? And you have 2 drives. So you could fulfill both of them. Each time you fulfill a drive, you advance, which is basically level up. And so if you fulfill both your drives every session, you level up twice every session. And there are going to be times where you don't level up, but by and large, you should be hopefully hitting at least one of your drives every single session, which means gaining a level every session, or at least getting a new thing. And I'm a big fan of that. FU Atlas, that just sounds really funny, is a bestseller on Drive-Thru RPG. Doesn't strike me as, it's a beautiful book. It's well made. They got some cool new classes in here. If you haven't picked it up, we have a affiliate link in our description below. Doesn't cost you any extra money, but we get a couple percentages. It'll take you over to this, but if you use that link, you can use it to buy this very easily and, show the Knights of Last Call some love. They're working on the Techno Fantasy book right now, I think, which is pretty cool. Derek was a menace when Bob GM'd that Leshy thing. Okay, yeah, but also because it was a fucking Leshy thing, okay? No, you got to see me play in Fistful of Flowers. That was me playing. FUKLC. Fakalk. And as I've been doing lately, a lot lately, to my concern, I agree with Vin here. The stuff just works philosophy strongly lends itself to fun. And that is a great way to describe it. This stuff in this game, by and large, it just works. And it feels big and bad and powerful. And again, we've been talking over the last couple months. We did a whole spiel about barbarians in Pathfinder 2nd Edition and how Bob is basically sworn them off, and how Bob had played a barbarian in 5th edition and felt like such a badass. Why? Because when he raged, he got resistance to all physical damage. Take 15. No. I take 7. Take 10. 5. Take 12. 6. He's like, I felt like such a badass, like I literally basically doubled my hit points. Then you play Pathfinder 2nd edition, you don't even start with that. You're like, I rage, and you're like, okay, you gain 3 temporary hit points. You're like, okay, you're hit for 10. You're like, I only take 7. And then the next round, you're like, oh, you're hit for 12. And you're like, I guess I just take all of that. So sometimes it's not just about the numbers and the math. It's about how it feels at the game. And because this is Final Fantasy inspired, like when a creature has vulnerability to a damage type, it takes double damage. Double. And this is a game where things kind of hit like bricks. So if you do 30 damage to something and it is vulnerable, it's going to take 60. That is literally, I mean, that would literally kill almost any PC. So finding that what that monster is weak against is such a huge reward, and it just pays off so big. And so a lot of the stuff in the game, because you only get one action on your turn, it just goes, it goes really big. It does not go home. It goes really big. And I really, really think that's really great. Yeah, everything hits like a ton of bricks for sure. And it's, I enjoy it because, again, in my mind, when our Northern Reaches mega game, you can't die. It's Pathfinder 2, but there's no death. If your character, again, it's our 100-player, 40 GM mega game, which everybody plays in the same persistent world. And, different GMs play differently, and people are, paying to be part of this game. You pay $10 a month to get in. On top of all the other benefits you get for being a $10 champion patron, part of our patron. But I don't want somebody to be like, oh, this GM killed me. It was an unfair counter and now I'm dead. And is my character deleted? And it's like, well, no, we want to have some consideration, but we also still want the penalty to be there. And so when you die in our Northern Reaches game, you suffer what is called a major defeat. Your character gets a couple status penalties, which you might have to take some actions in the game to burn off. But other than that, your character is essentially fine. And it's the same thing in this game. If your character dies, you just surrender. And there might be a narrative inconvenience, and the GM might get to do something that's nasty and you don't like it. But you, the player, you get to keep playing. Your PC gets to keep playing. And sometimes, dying is the easiest part. It's failing that sucks. And so in Northern Reaches, our PF2 GMs feel empowered to go, look, I'm going to throw this encounter at the party. And maybe they can beat it. Maybe they can't. Maybe they run away. Maybe they get wiped out. But I don't have to worry about ruining their fun and shitting on their parade, because the game system basically says all that's going to happen to them is you're going to get a major defeat. And it's the same thing in this game. We've all played Final Fantasy games where you get into that fight and you're supposed to lose. The boss is too difficult and he wipes everybody out. And maybe when you're a kid, you don't understand that that's supposed to happen. You can be an adult, you can kind of understand what's happening now. They don't really do that as much anymore, but it's a classic RPG. So you can have a fight. And by the way, you shouldn't probably design a fight like that. But if you do design a really, really tough fight and everybody dies, you just treat it like they would in a JRPG when it's the fight that you're supposed to lose. And everybody's unconscious and everybody's surrendered. And then the villain does something and takes the crystal and leaves you there. And it's only because, you got lucky or something like that you're able to come back in time and not get destroyed before the entire tower collapses. But they got away, and they have, your sister kidnapped, and they have your boyfriend kidnapped, and they've got the crystal, right? It's oh no. Dun, dun, dun. And so again, it puts pressure on you to storytell, and it puts pressure on you to sort of figure that stuff out. Mr. Blawface just bought FU on Drive-Thru RPG. Well, that is awesome. KC says, is PF2 to 13th Age to FU a happy path for players? Ooh. I will certainly say this, KC. PF2, okay? PF2 to 13th Age to FU to Blaze in the Dark would definitely be the way you would boil the frog, right? Because 13th Age still has a familiar D20. It still has class and levels in the traditional sense, but it really starts to introduce these narrative elements. It gets rid of skills in favor of backgrounds, and it's the grid kind of goes away, but you still have this concept of zones and near and far, and so it's softening and blurring those edges. And then FU takes that a step further and introduces even more narrative elements like fate points and or Fabula points, but they're basically fate points. Really dives into the idea of having aspects They call them traits and bonds, but in Fate, we would call them aspects, and starts to introduce like mechanics around things like clocks and stuff like that, which is very big part of the Blades in the Dark ecosystem. And then if you wanted to completely kind of divorce yourself from like trad fantasy, you could then go to like Scum and Villainy or Blades in the Dark, and probably even a PBTA game, honestly, but that would sort of be like the push through it. Hunter, the Martian. The last stream convinced me to buy this. I can't believe I missed most of this stream. Well, there's always the VOD Hunter. Honestly, if you're familiar with this game system, I don't think there's a ton of value here. Sorry. This is really just me basically saying I had a great experience with this game. I'd like to do more stuff with it. I want to continue to explore it and look into it. And I'm excited to see what they're going to come out with it. And, we did the first look. And, there's a million RPGs on my shelves, and it's surprising when one can really grab hold of my attention and my interest the way that this one has. And certainly there is a nostalgia play at work here because I do love classic Final Fantasy, but, yeah. Yeah, you might even be able to skip 13th Age if your players really love Final Fantasy. Yeah, if they know the tropes and they can move right in on it, I think that's probably fairly reasonable. The end stuff is the stuff I toned down a touch if running FU. It's the one thing that goes a bit too far for me. And that's because, Vin hates storytelling and he hates mechanics that help you tell better stories. His players and Vin, as a game master, are so good and talented at being role-playing game that they find that it just cramps their style. He says correct. Why can I not seem to find High Fantasy Atlas? I didn't buy it at Gen Con, but I want to get it now. It just can't seem to find it because it's my understanding, GM Scott, it was only available in print form at Gen Con. I think they printed what they got printed. It's sold out at Gen Con, and only the PDF is available. And if you want to get the hardback, you're going to have to wait. That is how, as I understand it. Because this is an Italian company and they publish in Italy and then they translate it and they publish it in English. So yeah. Well, it's almost 10 o'clock on a Sunday. So I'm probably going to start to wrap up here. I do want to say real quick for anybody who's watching, still watching, Sunday, today's Sunday. And by the way, if there are any questions about this game system or about anything you want to ask me about what I feel about the game system, please do so. I just want to say Tuesday, we are going to be back in the studio playing Root. However, Tuesday is going to be a very big announcement from the Knights of Last Call. Arguably, maybe one of the biggest announcements we've ever made. So we're going to be announcing that on the date of the Root game. That's Tuesday. What is that? That's Tuesday, August 22nd. So you may want to tune in for that, at least to see what the special announcement is. But just kind of giving you a little heads up, just case in point. Just you might want to mark that one on your calendar. But we'll see what we do from there. Actually, KC, I know you put sarcastic. This guy's a machine. This guy is the game designer is a machine. He has published an entire thing, and he published this book, and he's got like a bunch of there's like a necromancer class that they did for Halloween. They did like a deck based thing for April Fool's Day. He's already got the next book. He's got like 60 or 70 playtest pages available through his Patreon of like the techno fantasy. And they, introduce, by the way, we didn't even get into it, but this fantasy book, it introduces limit breaks. It introduces, zero powers. It really is just bringing in all the Final Fantasy tropes that you would expect, to see. So, this guy's a machine. He is just producing a lot of content. Animazemon, I had a question that was based on it being an any winner for best product sometime up, but it was more general than just this game. Oh, well, feel free to repeat it. I might have just missed it there, buddy. I missed it. Laughing out law. Sorry, I missed the stream. That's all right, buddy. We're all good. It's all good. There's always a pot. Okay.
Jason B tipped $10. So if you're playing this, when are you playing XIF?
When am I playing Final Fantasy? When am I playing Final Fantasy 14? You know, I don't think I have it right now in my stars, Jason, to play any sort of MMOs. Getting a video game into the schedule is going to be pretty dang tough. My plan is to start this month, by the end of the month, start planning out a bunch of Patreon games that I'm going to be running for my higher tier patrons, my Legends and Exalted members, to whom I am extremely thankful. I do want to give a quick shout out to my groups of Legends and Exalted. Shout out to Archon, Mundar, Karumak, Hawkeye, Omrid, Whoopelstein, Hoyrit, Orcus Sun, Low Class, Ryan Dale, Zoil, Josh, John Bonanza, Rick Sherman, Sean, Darth Gorlock, Golda Cat, Boothby, Frosty, Sim Osama, GM Scott, Laughing Outlaw, Donnie Taylor, and Mr. Ben Osaro. Those fine people are members of our Exalted and Legend tier, and they have gone above and beyond to continue to show this channel an unbelievable amount of love and support, not just monetarily, but in terms of their friendship, their gaming, their advice, their modding, like just all in all, incredible people who basically make the game the other way. Did I just call you by my real name? Yes, I was going down the line and then I got distracted. So yes, Pumpkin. Yeah, your real name is Penguin. By the way, you know, I'm going to make an official KOLC Penguin shirt. By the way, that is going to happen. Like anybody who knows this channel knows us well enough that I will throw money away for the serious troll. I will do it happily. Let's see here. For me, product also includes the idea of formatting for the material of the book. Of all the books you've read through, what is the epitome of a good / a rule / material layout? It's a great question. I don't know. That is a good question. I don't know the answer to that exactly. I don't know, but that's a great question. I don't know. I have to think about that. But I agree with you. Yeah, there's, formatting it for how the book is laid out and how it works and like understanding the flow of it. I mean, boy. The Pathfinder 2 beginner box set's pretty good. Like the way that they include the things and the pre-gens, the little card sheets. It's pretty good, well designed. Would Nightfinder hazard a step in FU's direction for rituals? Probably not. What I think you would see for Nightfinder, though, self-confessed cynic, is like 300 and 400 of the spells being dropped from the game in slots, and us adding like 50 to 80 more generic rituals that cover a wider range of effects is kind of probably how I would see it happening. Something in that neighborhood, if that sounds right. Lol says I would so buy the Penguin shirt. Yeah, I know. He's always going there like, oh no, I messed up. Dude, you're like a celebrity. Like everyone loves it. Like just embrace it. It's there. I love the form factor of these newer books. Yeah, I mean, I people are getting better at making games. I mean, it's just the long and the short of it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, to seeing what we're going to do here, with the game system and with, some of the stuff here from Knight's Last Call. I don't think I'm going to be, a full-time content creator, anytime soon. But that being said, the patrons have really continued to show up and show us their love and support. And there are things that we can think about doing now that we could never have thought about doing, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even last year. And so I think, things like, hey, we've got, I don't know, I'm going to say it. Fine. I'll say it. We have like the biggest, more than Paizo. We have the best Pathfinder 2 minds in the world in our Discord. I mean, these are people who not only play Pathfinder 2 a absolutely insane amount. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in the world that is playing as much Pathfinder 2 as the people of Knights of the Last Call. Okay. And I don't necessarily just mean me. I'm talking about my patrons. I'm talking about folks that are running 20 hours of games a week, people that ran back-to-back 8-hour games. I mean, we're talking insanity here. Okay. So not only do these people have an incredible amount of, not even the PF2E Discord. All right, Carzoni, let me update that. The most Pathfinder 2E played at a proficient level. Because that's what I was going to say. Not only are these folks playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition a lot, these folks are not in an echo chamber. They are reading and playing Blades in the Dark. They are reading and playing Powered by the Apocalypse, 2D20, Fabula Ultima, Old School Essentials, 1st Edition AD&D. They are getting the kind of exposure that I think makes you a great game designer. I've had conversations with this man, okay, in his Discord and with the game designer for this, and it's very rare that I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy probably knows more than me, right, about role-playing games. Like he is a true wizard expert, and I consider myself to be pretty high level in that regard. This guy's higher level. Let me be clear. But the people in Knights of the Last Call, very high level, because they've been a part of this community. And so I think that gives you a better sense of designing because you have that kind of exposure. Yeah, right. I Am Prophet, okay, aka Mr. Birdsong, now is a paid permanent employee of Paizo. He's one of their core design staff. I Am Prophet, legendary Northern Reaches game master, infamously made an alchemist just to prove Derek wrong in season 1 of Northern Reaches, and ended up taking that bad boy to new heights of power, to the point where I had to begrudgingly admit that at mid to high levels, the alchemist was actually pretty okay. So yeah, we have some real talent. And so there are things that it's not going to make me a lot of money. It's not going to put my name on the map. I'm not going to be like some huge big designer or something like that. And I don't, quite frankly, fucking want that. But I do have some awesome friends, right? And we love to talk about games, and they're really good at this. So I was like, why wouldn't I take advantage of that to try to create something lasting? And, I don't know that Knights of the Last Call is going to last forever. I have no plans about it one way or the other. I mean, I'd love to get as much fun and use out of this as people can get. But at the very least, even if, life changes and things happen, who knows? Maybe I end up wifing up somebody and having a kid or whatever, and I don't have the time or something. It'd be cool to look back and say, yeah, but me and, my 300 closest RPG friends got together and we built something that, we loved and we cool. And, it was like, that is something I can look back on. Well, I don't have a kid. Exactly, Bob. So this is the only thing I can do for a legacy. Like when I'm gone, that's it. There's nothing left behind. It's just, Bullhorn, he said it dropping the mic. Yeah. I mean, look, these are smart people that we get to, that's why I spend so much time on my Discord, is because by and large, these are very, very smart people. And some of them I disagree with, by the way, a lot, but that doesn't mean that they're not smart and that they don't make good points. It's just in counter purpose to what I believe to be true. Yeah, exactly. F you. This guy is extremely talented, so I do want to point that out. But yes, passion and knowledge and hard work can really deliver. And this guy deserves all the praise and kudos for that, So Carzoni, it is never too late to join Northern Reaches game. We have several systems in place in Northern Reaches. Number one, as the game goes on, you get to start at a higher level. So that always helps. And number two, we use a system of sidekicking and mentoring so that if you're a lower level character, you're joining an adventure that's maybe a couple levels higher than you, you actually can basically just kind of temporarily bump up your level. So that way your attack bonuses, saving throws, skills, armor class are more competitive so that you don't feel like you're kind of useless. So nope. In fact, a lot of people, Carzoni, have recently just purchased new character slots because their characters are so high level. The game goes to the end of the year. They're kind of like, I'm going to max out. So I'm going to like kind of restart with a new character and, kind of enjoy low level again. And, I'll still play my high level character, but realizing, okay, wow, I'm level 15. There's still 4 months left of this campaign. I don't need to rush. Like I'm going to get to level 20. Like once I get there, there's nothing for me to do. $10 is champion tier is what we get for Northern Reaches. And by the way, I'm not even going to sugarcoat this for you. If you play Northern Reaches, you are getting a fucking steal of a deal for playing $10. I mean, $10 also gets you all the other stuff in our Patreon. It gets you access to our Discord. It gets you access to our catalog, archive of exclusive Patreon videos, et cetera, et cetera. It gets you tickets. But like, there are people out there who pay $40 per player to play in these like, dial a DM type things, right? Where it's like every Friday you play in this like online game from like a professional dungeon master, and you're paying $40 for a 4-hour session. I mean, we have people who are paying, $2.50 a week to play 2 or 3 times. Like you are paying nothing. I mean, you're paying literally 60 to 70 cents a game sometimes. And you're literally paying like a quarter an hour. And I was going to follow that up with that. And honestly, a lot of those pro GMs, I mean, I've talked with people who've come to our Discord, people who've come to our Patreon and said, oh, I'm not shaming anybody who does that, whether you're a player or a game master. That's fine. But a lot of people have told me a lot of horror stories about those people. I'm sure there are good GMs out there, but by and large, our GMs are doing this because they love to run games. And quite frankly, they run a lot of games. So they're pretty good at it. Certainly when it comes to being exposed to so many different elements. And that's the other thing about Northern Reaches. It's not just Pathfinder Society. This is a unique game. It has about 90 pages, 100 pages of custom rules that make it its own unique, complex beast. But if you're willing to put investment into it, you can be part of this community world building exercise. And quite frankly, it's pretty fucking sick. Absolutely. Of course. I mean, yeah, that's one of the things about us where it's like, first couple of years we did this channel, I lost money every single month. So, sure, we're making a little bit of money now. Thank you, patrons. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody who donated. I'm able to cut some checks to Bob and Smith, and Bob was finally able to go out and buy a resin printer, and every fucking third post he makes now is either a picture of his spool of filament, or it's a picture of what he's printing, or a picture of what he's going to print out next. And so, like, that was awesome that I was able to take profit that we made from this channel and give that to someone like Bob, who's bust his ass to keep Northern Reaches running, right? That I was able to cut a huge, big, fat check to Smith. Again, he's not going to retire on it, but you put some extra money in your pocket and you can go, buy a $700-800 printer. That feels good, So, we're trying really hard, and as much as we're doing all that, we're still trying to take the money that we make from our Patreon and find ways to give it back to our patrons, right? We make merch, and we have stickers, and we have dice getting printed, and those are all perks that you get for being part of our Patreon. That's cash that I had to pay to get those things made, and then I'm giving them back to the people who are giving me money. So it all just comes, back into the ecosystem, So. And we have plans for future shirts and future things and this and that. And, I know, and again, Tuesday, we're going to have a big announcement. And, again, we're just trying to make this a fun community experience for everybody, because it's not about the channel. I cannot stress that enough. This is not about youtube.com/, Knights of the Last Call. It is about this community of people. It's about the patrons. It's about the people who come to these chats, that they're part of these conversations, maybe people who throw some money in because they want to support us. But it's about building a community that at the end of the day, I would hope would long outlast any sort of, channel per se. So we play at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Daylight Time, whatever. 7 p.m. current time on Tuesdays. Actually, our go live day is almost always go live time is almost always 7 p.m. So, like one thing that I'd love to get made. And Alyssa has a friend who does like custom dice because you can't get these like printed. A lot of people like the idea of what we call the Mutants and Masterminds hero dice. Some people call them the KOLC hero dice, right? Hero point rerolls suck in Pathfinder 2 because you might roll lower, right? And so we want to get dice made that are D20s that are labeled 11 through 20 twice. So basically, and make it cool and maybe like big. And so that way it's like your hero point die if you're using the Knights of Last Call hero point rule and house rule, where the reroll of the hero point is basically the Mutants and Masterminds hero point, which is basically a D10 plus 10. Or another way to put it is it's a D20, but if you roll between a 1 and a 10, you get to re-roll the die or add 10 to the face. Either way, I'd rather have just one die that you roll and it's just 11 through 20 twice. So, be pretty, and we'll get it made in Knights of Last Call colors or something like that and be very visible. It'd be fun. So again, is that groundbreaking or revolutionary? No, but I like taking a good chunk of the money that everybody gives me every month and just putting it back into the channel because again, it's not about lining my pockets. It's about, putting a fun community together. So now those are just called cheating dice, but that is pretty sweet. All right, everybody. If again, I think I don't know that we're going to do another stream exactly about this, but Root is going to be episode 4 this Tuesday. So we'll probably have like somewhere between 3 to 5 more episodes of Root. So we'll probably be done with Root, honestly, by the end of September. And, I don't know if I can wait that long. I mean, I don't know if I can wait that long to start a game of Fabula Ultima. So, it's just cool stuff. I'm hyped for Root 2. If you missed last week's episode, you missed a hell of an episode. It ended on quite the cliffhanger. Let me put it this way. Last week's episode is the perfect example of why I don't do prep for PBTA games, especially that game, because anything that I would have prepped would have been immediately useless because of what my players did and didn't do, or did do, or didn't do again. So you can never predict what's going to happen. Even me, right? You, the audience, you're surprised. The players playing, they're surprised. The game master, I'm surprised. Like nobody knew what the fuck was going to happen. So, it's always a crazy spin. And of course, I think, did we reach both goals last time? Are Bob and Aaron going to be back in their suits? I don't remember. Let me see here. Oh yes, they were. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, I think we're going to have Nick as a badger. We're going to have Aaron as a raccoon. We're going to have Bob as a fox. And, we're getting closer, unfortunately, to a potential goal where, I have to wear the costume. All right, everybody. It's 10 o'clock. I'm going to head out of here. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you again for being a supporter of this channel. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any comments or questions, drop a comment below. Join the Patreon. Drop me a hi. We have a brand new Fabula Ultima channel that we created in our other games category just to talk about this game because it is going to get some hype from, I think, our community. We've already had a couple community games that have been playing for a while, campaigns. I expect to see some more. And again, there's a very real chance that you're going to see this get played on our channel. So fantastic game. I cannot recommend it enough. Again,
I have a hard choice about which games I'm going to play, and this game makes it a little bit easier. So thanks a lot, everybody, and I will see you Tuesday on Knights of Last Call. Peace out, everybody.